This is Naoki Yoshida.
This is Fern Hall.
And you are listening to Aetheryte Radio.
Aetheryte Radio.
Here we go.
I think it's over. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Aetheryte Radio.
Nailed it.
Yeah!
Nailed the intro.
This is Gamerscape's Final Fantasy XIV podcast. We're here to tell you all this good stuff. Fusion is so mad at me right now.
I love good stuff. I don't know why Fusion would be mad. I think that's selling exactly what we're trying to put out there.
Listen, the thing doesn't play me sound, and my usual thing is like a sound cue, so it was like, the screen's black, go! Anyway. If you've been keeping up with us, actually I should introduce this first. So I'm Xenedra, not Fusion X. Sorry, we're here today without our beloved Fusion X because we want him to not melt. So he's holed up with air conditioning and trying to not die. Good job on you. I also have Aldianaux and Rook. And once again joining us, the illustrious Anonymoose to help us out.
Hello.
With a Lorecast. Hooray. Third and technically final, theoretically.
Question mark?
Yeah, sure, final. I was going to say, this is the third Lorecast in a row we've managed to trap Moose here with us. And
Yeah.
I feel like we could easily make it 4. So I'm kind of planning ahead for that. You know, there's something else that we could discuss. Definitely not going to just talk about Nautilus today all day and then
Sure.
maybe do, Zadnor next time. But,
I feel like Moose is a very busy man, and we will at some point have to let him go. Poor guy.
One day.
One day.
Mhm. I mean, we've kept him in that room for so long.
So long.
The Green Void.
Yeah. I mean, I've been up here on assignment on the moon. I don't know why. I could come back now. I built it. It's good now.
You built. Oh my gosh, you're done with the moon?
Yeah, totally.
you finished all the Endwalker content?
Mhm.
What?
There
It's
we go.
okay.
I'm struggling over
Is it-
here. I have way too many windows
alright.
open, and
Uh-huh.
I'm like, all right, the Lorecast window is right. Where'd it go? Oh no. Anyway, we do have a little bit of news, so we're going to start with that today. The 14-hour broadcast / letter from the producer live is going to be Friday, July 9th. I'm pretty excited about that, except that they're like, first half is a review of the recently announced Endwalker info. Review? Tell me something new! Theoretically, hopefully they will tell us something new. But if you miss this one, it might not be that bad. The other thing, which I found really hilarious, is the second half, is Yoshi P is going to be joined by Yosuke Saito and Yoko Taro to answer questions from the official forums about the latest 24-man series. So really, you could watch that in Japanese and not understand, or you could watch our last podcast.
That's so true, Zen. That was brilliantly done. That was well done. Yes.
Or at least watch the last podcast to have more questions and submit them before
that's
that.
true. That's true. Eventually, they will put those answers back on the official forums in English for you to read.
Yes.
It has actually given me great joy to see how many people appreciated that cast. So thank you
know.
anybody who said
Oh, yes.
anything, anywhere to any of us. Yes, Moose. I mean, I think we all came out of it learning a lot, but it was also great just to have such a big discussion, and it made me consider that whole raid series in a different way. So
Exactly.
maybe other people, if you missed it, it'll do the same for you.
One can dream.
Yes, and obviously we could not have done that without Moose's grand knowledge of not only 14, but also Nier, because I don't know what the heck's going on at Nier.
Well, I used up most of the juice last week, so don't expect me to be too helpful today.
That's it.
The broadcast itself starts at 6 p.m. PDT, and the live letter starts at 7:30 p.m. PDT. And as normal, you can find that on YouTube Live, Nico Live, or Twitch. I was looking around for news yesterday, and I saw that they had posted up all the art contest winners. There's some really great stuff in there. If you guys haven't looked, holy crap. Somebody made a, life-size, very accurate table orchestrion. And it looks amazing.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
so
I didn't
cool.
see
I
that.
gotta see that.
It's really
That's
neat.
awesome.
It lights up and everything, like the faceplate and the little blue thing on the top. It's really cool.
You know,
I did see that
Go
the reward for this time is actually like something new that's super cute. Isn't it like a great serpent umbrella?
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
adorable.
That's really cute. And works too, because he's all stripy.
Mm-hmm.
What are you gonna say, Charles? Yeah.
As more and more people get into the game, we just get more and more creators as well. And you can just see like the amount of fan art in the last couple of months really feels far and above before. And we're just gonna keep getting this. It's a great time to want to see these things.
So all of the winners are up, and all of the contestants are up too. So you can see the people who won, people who made finalists, and just everybody who sent anything at all. And it's a good time, to be honest, if you enjoy looking at people's art. So have a look see at that on the Lodestone. The latest little mini patch I looked through really quick, and there's this really kind of cool little feature where when you log in, you can go directly to a different server. So you don't have to log in and then find an Aetheryte. You can just log into a different server from that login menu, and then it'll put you, I think, in the Aetheryte next to your home city, or in your home city next to the Aetheryte.
It's so nice, especially if like you're on a world that's pretty busy and you're going to go do something with friends or like an RP event somewhere else, or you're just gonna like do maps or something. You don't have to like wait for the queue to get into your world and then go to the thing, and then you can just be like right off the bat, please just put me in the place where everybody else is. I just want to go straight there. Thank you.
Yeah, preemptive strats for Realbound Extreme.
Yeah.
So that's never going to happen again.
Or if you log out on another server other than your own, you can just log in on yours again.
Yeah, that's one of the great uses of it.
I've also heard people saying that they think this, and I'm not sure if it was actually in the details on this, so tell me if I just don't know. But people saying that they think that might be part of their preemptive stuff as well for the data center travel, that they may be trying to integrate it in that way. Although originally they had kind of said that you'd have to be like on the data center page and then pick. So like maybe you will go like on your main, you log in, you get that screen, and then you go to data center, but then from there you'll be able to pick which world to sort of go into or something. It seems like it's kind of part of the preemptive structures for that. So
it doesn't mention it, but that makes sense to me. So they added a new emote and some new fancy digs to the mug shop. If you want to throw flowers forever, not have to carry all those fireworks with you, get that emote. And the it's like a robe with like a scarf. It's very Eastern, but very swank at the same time. So if that's your aesthetic, check that out. It's pretty good looking.
Immediately I bought it because I like the flair of an Eastern summoner, and it just fits the bill immediately.
There you go. And our last bit of news is actually Zadnor related. Ha ha ha.
This makes me so sad.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm not ready for this one.
So, Matsuno tweeted in reply to several players and fans on Twitter that his collab with 14 is actually over with the liberation of Boja. And granted, this is it looked like to me that it was a lot of Google Translate. So maybe something was missed in translation. We're all hoping, basically, that something was missed in translation. But for right now, it sounds like all the Evilly stuff in 14 is no longer going to have Matsuno hands on it.
If it's even going to continue, I don't know. This was like actually, especially as we looked ahead to doing this cast today, covering the lore, because this last portion that we got really seemed like it was going to be leading into the next portion of this story. I was like actually gutted by this because he says, and like you can find actually on Gamer Escape, I think, off the Twitter and stuff like that, we went in and actually posted the tweets, right? And at first it was really vague where he was just saying kind of like, yeah, my part in the collaboration is done. And maybe that means that later on. And then he followed up in a couple comments saying that, like, I guess the Japanese reception to it had been incredibly lukewarm. And it sounds like, to me, the impression I got was that they had like canceled any future stuff for this. And I'm just over here like, what? No, but I've been waiting for so long, and he's such a great creator, and it's so frustrating because, oh, yes, thank you. The shirt that Aldianaux is wearing today also honors this. Like, the lore in this story that we're going to dig into today just is incredible, and whatever you thought of the actual content, I'm so bummed we're
Yeah.
not going to see him get to keep creating
Fusion
in
in
this
chat
space.
says, "Does it make you sad, Nor?"
Fusion, you're not even on the podcast, and I have to tell you to get out.
This really kind of took the wind out of my sails a bit too, because like when I was going through all this stuff, I was kind of just setting up like having all the field notes in front of me because it is so much information. But like as I'm doing it, I'm like seeing this pattern of what plot holes are left open and what story could possibly be told by filling them. And I don't know why I was doing that because after Evilise, I saw that there was a whole bunch of plot holes open. He was just like, "Okay, bye," and I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, like, I guess that's the Matsuno-san way. Like, he creates a bunch of stuff. He uses some of it. He's on his way." I don't know why I didn't expect that this time around. I don't know why I looked at all of these after 2 parts and was like, "Oh, there's clearly a third part. They're not just leaving all of this hanging," but we are.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
Like I said in the pre-show, the thing that I immediately thought of was the movie Contact. If that's it, it's an awful waste of space, right? Like we're hitting the ground running with this stuff. It ends and we're in mid-sprint, like with the story. It's like, oh, and now, and then brick wall. Come on. But it is what it is.
Yeah. On the flip side, at least all the tweets sort of let Matsuno know that the American/NA fan base were actually really into it.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
and like
sent him one.
Yeah, if you haven't put one on there, I mean, you can easily, I'm sure, find, in some of this, whole conversation and his account and everything, but like, go. It means so much to creators, and it seems like he's translating all the comments and things, or, somebody is doing it for him. So, like, if you go and if there was any part of these that you enjoyed, I would just tell this man thank you, because I feel like out of all of the Final Fantasy creators, whatever you've thought about like Tactics or 12, right? And at various points when they were released, it was pretty controversial because of certain, like especially with 12, because of the departure from turn-based combat. And like as we have looked back on it and as things like Zodiac Age have come out, there is so much that was so ingenious about that game. And that was a really interesting risk. And I think it's worth it, especially with him, to just be like, hey, thanks for these stories and these cool, unique worlds and this fantasy feel.
Right.
And because I feel like out of all the creators, he tends to be the one that it's like, he's doing something really cool, and then they pull the rug out from underneath him.
Charlie Brown with the football, right?
Oh.
I try to be fair and see it from kind of both sides. I try to see it. I try to see everything from every angle, but like with Matsuno-san in particular, like I was a little nervous when he was coming in because it's just like how much of 12 is now canon to 14? Like how are we going to mesh those together? And he actually decided to rebuild it in a way that it was consistent with 14. I was really impressed with it. And then we left a bunch of stuff hanging. But then he came back to it and used it in a really good way too. So I'm not going to say like there's, this impeccable, unbeatable quality that no one could ever match. Like he has this grand vision, and as he's executing it, he kind of bumps into stuff along the way. Some stuff falls off some tables, but if someone's like walking around cleaning that stuff up, you're gonna love the result. So it's just like, can we get someone to clean up some vases and keep him around just a little longer? Like just those two, like, we find a nice balance between those. It'll be okay.
I absolutely agree. It's so fascinating to me because no creator is flawless, right? And we have to always remember that too, right? Creators are people. The facets of their work that may shine or be really unique to who they are will always come with some kind of trade-off. Like there's always going to be something because nobody can be all-encompassing. And so just like you were saying, it takes a team to kind of come together and support different visions and fill in those gaps and do different things. And even as we talk about this content today, I have no doubt there will be a lot of things that we do bring up and we're like, this was weird, that was weird, this implementation was strange, this lore bit, what happened with that? Is that ever going to happen again? Like, but for all of that, I think I've always found Matsuno to be just really fascinating in his use of language, his use of world building, his really specific aesthetic and style, and all of those things. I too was kind of unsure how they'd get introduced and integrated into 14, but I think they actually worked really well. And there were a lot of things that came out of this that were really cool lore things and really unique pieces of information we got.
Yeah.
He trapped me in his grand vision a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, good, Joel.
Oh no, I was just gonna say my greatest shame as a Final Fantasy player is that I've never finished 12 because I do not like the battle system, but I continue to buy it every time it comes out. I continue to try it once a year and get to the same spot.
I say this to everybody because I played 12, like, it's like near 1. I played it back in the day and I loved it, and I couldn't convince my friends to finish it. So I've been given this speech for years and years. I'm gonna try it now, but
I'm ready.
12 does require some patience. Like, for one, the battle system is unlike anything we've ever used in Final Fantasy before. And for two, the story has a tendency to really drag ass in the middle because it like teases you to go do like side stuff.
Oh yeah.
And then before you know it, you're on the other side of the world and you're like, what was this story about? Like, what was I doing? I feel like there was an emergency the last time I was talking to somebody, and I've just been doing hunts for, but yeah, so like if you can deal with those two things, it is a fantastic game. But like, I want to remind you that this battle system was lifted almost wholesale for Dragon Age to critical acclaim.
Mm-hmm.
To critical acclaim. Everybody loved it in Dragon Age. We only ever talk about it in 12.
Yeah.
It's true.
And things like Zodiac Age make it so much more approachable now. Like, this is like really, if you go in and you put those settings on where it'll auto grind certain sections. Because what's so interesting about it, and this is, we won't go too far into it because we got to actually do lore today, as much as I'd love to just pad this out again for another week. But, like, a lot of people who actually got into programming, my partner being one of them, were obsessed with this game because of the logic systems and the ways that you could optimize and create these flows and, like, how you can make your team work in this way that you could farm zones. And I absolutely wish there was an official review, Moose, in which you said this game really drags ass in the middle. Because
I'd be willing to write one. Like,
I mean, it'd be so good.
I'm laughing inside as you're talking about like the coder mindset, because I do not have a coder mindset, and I cannot count the amount of times in that game I set up what I thought was a brilliant gambit to handle a boss and forgot something about halfway through. A really good example I can give you is Demon Wall, where you're supposed to put reflect on all of your people and then have them reflect black magic on each other onto the Demon Wall. I forgot to specify to only do that when reflect was on. I left the menu. They all nuked each other down in 30 seconds and game over.
Oh,
no. Not exactly the same thing, but I am the same kind of person. I was in it for the world, the characters, the feel, the music. I loved those. And I was so bad at the combat the first time I played it. I think I quit that game 5 times because I'd get to some boss, you'd get locked into like a sequence, and then I'd be like, I did not anticipate literally anything that was about to happen, and we have died 50 times now. And like, it's funny
so
that
you mentioned Dragon Age, because I don't like that style of battle system. If I cannot micromanage, I don't want to do it. So that's why 12 drives me insane. I love the story. I don't even care about grinding. I just played Monster Hunter Stories for like 15 hours, and it's the demo. And like, and I was just grinding for 15 hours. It's just that loss of control. But anyway.
All right. You guys ready to actually talk about Zadnor and what the heck happened there?
Let's do it.
So our first outline point. Resistance scouts have confirmed the 4th Legion are consolidating their forces at Zadnor, despite the presence of the Imperial fleet. I don't know how to say this guy. Bajsalgen? I'm going to go with that.
This is actually a really good point about...
Bajsalgen.
Basalyen is how I've always said it.
That's probably it.
Okay. Because it's Bozja.
Yeah, Bozja.
I mean...
Basalyen intends to confront the enemy with Camp Verdelnis as the staging ground.
I think.
Zen, I'm going to need you to read every single location on this map real quick. Can you pull up the map names real quick?
Sierros?
I just need to know
While you're doing that, I'm going to comment on the fact that in every single pronunciation I've seen of this guy's name, it has always been two different pronunciations of the J. Yeah. They have never matched.
That's why it's Baisalgen.
This is where having voice lines would have helped us a lot, I think.
Yeah,
in this one, even though sometimes there's some inconsistencies, but they're pretty good. They're pretty good about it in 14 compared to certain other games that I know. But like, I have seen that people either lean into it with the hard pronunciation, even with Bozja or like Bajja, people were calling it for a while. Like, to me, I've always done like Bozja or, used it almost more as a Y. So I think that's why I said Basalian, but that would be actually be Bisalian.
I couldn't choose between Bozja and Bozja, so I Bozja, like, right?
Yeah.
Like, blur
Smoosh
it
them
a
together
little
in the
bit.
middle.
Yeah.
I just call him Basil. Basil intends to confront the enemy.
I mean, Basil is the much more PG version that we could turn this name into if we really wanted.
Sure.
I was really into it, and then that name was just like, oh, okay, I guess I'm not getting through that without screwing up. So anyway, that happens.
It does. It's kind of funny because obviously we talked today about encompassing, I think, a lot of the Bozja lore, and not just Zadnor, although we're starting with Zadnor because it's the most recent, right? Mm-hmm. Zadnor, between like in the scope of everything, really felt like the most weirdly paced, maybe. Like the introduction to the zone and even like the quests that we're about to get into. There's nothing in many of them. But there's so much surrounding these, like, the characters, the fates, these things. So, like, when we first get introduced to this area, I was actually surprised. I thought it was going to be more interesting of an introduction here, where we'd actually, like, see some of what was happening.
Right. This, I did this part of the outline, and this is the longest part, this intro. Like, this has the most bullet points, because it's the most of, like, okay, set it up a little bit, and then set some stuff around, who knows.
I'm gonna skip ahead to the next plot point because it's part of my talking about this. But
let's do that.
The next plot point is Cid is able to erect a barrier to protect. How do I pronounce this? Verdelnis? Is that what we're going for?
Sure,
that's what I would say.
I think so.
Sure. So he's got a barrier that protects Camp Verdelnis from aerial assaults, and this scene was the funniest thing to me. The timing of it is just like there's no attempt or finesse in trying to get you to forget that you're playing a video game. Like Cid is just like, yeah, I've got a barrier. It works like this. Bring them in. And then 3 airships just kind of come over in formation. They fire 1 volley at it and then they fly away. And he's like, thank you to my lovely assistants. And it's just kind of like, wait, what?
I know.
Now I'm seeing Cid as a magician.
Yes, exactly. You're right. Sid's like standing there like, and for my first act. Haha. And then it's like the show doesn't actually continue. There's nothing else after that. It's weird because there were 2 things I noticed right off the bat with this setup. Exactly what you said, Moose, where it's like, oh, so we're probably going to be facing a bunch of aerial assaults, and that's why we got like the big ship at the end. And then I looked out at the actual first opening area of the zone, and I was like, oh, the geography is, one might say, uninspiring or flat or empty. Or there's nothing. And I was like, oh, maybe it's because as we go through this, there are going to be like random spawning events that drop in, or, these fighter pilots, as you're in an encounter, can come down or like bomb the area. And there's like one spot where that happens in a particular engagement, but like nothing else. So it is weird. Like this opening area and zone and the setup, it does feel very contrived and like not fully realized almost in what they set up.
I mean, it was kind of a cool moment when you see that the barrier gets hit every once in a while.
Yeah.
Like that's cool, but okay. Functionally the same.
I actually really liked the shadows that come over, like as you're going across, like there's the airship shadows, and then every now and then a couple of random like firings on the field.
Yeah.
But I mean, like when I look upon somewhere that's like supposed to be a war zone, and I see it's like really interesting, sometimes I'm also a little confused about that too, because I feel like barren wasteland is where most people who've been to, like certain kinds of wars are just kind of like, yeah, that looks right. Like,
yeah,
that's why it didn't bother me. Like, I know it did bother a lot of people to go out there and be like, I see we're visiting the moon early with the blank expanse that's here.
Oh, I had that same idea.
Yeah, but like, it didn't really bother me. I'm like, things out here have been exploded 500 billion times. There's nothing here. It's dead land. I found the, like, aether, like, crystal veins very interesting, because it was sort of a breakup to Moonscape. But I don't know, it didn't bother me as much as I've heard other people talk about it.
I don't know why it stood out to me so much. I mean, I guess even just in a war zone, right? Like having a grim landscape. And I think it even worked better for me in the first one. That felt almost more immersive to me with like the trenches and things. And we know that this area was kind of like sucked dry of Aether. Like we learned this, there's various reasons, right? That it's become something, you know, kind of like a wasteland, you know? But I found myself sort of wishing that even within that, there were points of interest. You know what I mean? Like this is the thing. Like a crater where something had exploded that had exposed a vein underneath it, or a group of resistance scouts that had huddled underneath some ledge only to be killed and you like find their bodies. Although they don't really show dead corpses around in the game. But like if we're telling like a narrative of war, to me, I'm like, of course it's not going to be like, I'm in a beautiful field of flowers and I feel the fantasy deep in my heart. It's like, no, this is a war zone.
So you just want some interest points, you mean? Like
something that kind of gives you that immersion and feel, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
You know, unexploded ordnance, you know, that we could run across. Things like that, you know. That maybe it would have been too much. Maybe it would have turned it into what, you know, WoW has in the Maw, and nobody likes that. Because it's just a little bit too annoying. So maybe they just decided on, you know, the side of caution. They're like, let's not.
Maybe
I don't know.
They wanted to make sure there wasn't a lot of crap in the the landscape that you have to try and hurry around as you're running your ass off to the Fates.
That's fair. That's fair. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of. I feel like this opening.
Yeah.
There were moments that were neat, but it is kind of also like maybe a little underwhelming compared to a lot of other stuff. But I agree. I like the shadows and things.
I really didn't expect too much from the opening because we just left one war zone. We're pushing forward. They've pulled back to a position we didn't expect to engage them. The place is a wasteland. So I really just saw it as a chase. I saw it as this idea that we're going to a place that hasn't been the major part of the war, and we're trying to push to where they've docked. That's pretty much it. So it's a race between, can we establish a forward position fast enough that they don't leave before we get there? And if there was nothing else from A to B, I wasn't too shocked with it.
And that's basically what we get in the next couple quests. Like, hey, you want to push up to each camp in sequence just like you did in the first one? Yeah, do that. That's what they ask you to do. And then when you get done with that part, they're like, we got these thingies. Can you put these thingies around for us? They're called dams. I don't remember what that even is called or stands for.
Yeah, I should have put that in there. Probably.
I don't know.
I can look it up.
Something ethereal manipulator.
I
don't know.
Yeah. Dam ethereal manipulator. Anyway, you basically this actually reminded me a lot of Eureka, having to go around and find the little points. Except instead of going to the point and being like, aha, I see a thing that belongs here, you're placing the things that belong there. So I thought that
was the point. I thought they were just kind of like, hey, we built all these systems for Eureka. It was very hit and miss. Reception was pretty lukewarm. What would you do if you had control of that? I thought that's what Bozia was. I thought that's what this whole thing was.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the dams again feel kind of they feel like a very obvious game device. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I at least enjoyed in the first zone as well that there were occasionally, you know, you'd go to a place and then there might be like that little bonus area or like a cutscene that you got. I was surprised again that with this one, you like go and you put it in the ground and then she's like, cool, yeah, okay, come on back. And I was like, oh, that's it? There's no more? Like,
that's all? All right.
Is it
I guess...
disabling ethereal?
Oh, maybe disabling. That might be.
Because that's what they do. Once you have them all down, they do like a EMP on the ship, right?
Yeah, so it has like a purpose. I see like in chat, you know, Dan works into moving Aether current to camp to sustain the barrier, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I believe so, right, for this portion?
Yeah.
So
they're
like,
conduits that kind of move energy.
Okay, so we're like channeling that through. So yeah, there's that. I guess, Moose, it's interesting hearing you talk about like the idea of like pushing to a final confrontation. While this was happening, I couldn't help but think about Elder Scrolls Online. So like in the base game, there's this culmination of story, and I had never finished it originally, but I just finished it in the last couple months, where you end up in this whole other zone, and it's essentially like hostile territory, and you start out in this like these ruins of this protected little city kind of thing, and then you have to make these excursions to these 3 different portions of the map where like as you're out there are like these little side quests that you can complete, which then like bring allies back to this town, and like the town will start to grow and change, and you'll see like various buildings that are locked up at the start open and stuff like that. And I think for what this content is and the response from Eureka, it makes sense that they streamlined a lot, that they're, you know, I completely understand that context. But I couldn't help but think as I was going through this, how much more fun it would have probably been for me, rather than just like putting the dams in different places, to actually have that sense of like momentum of, yes, like having to battle forward, like you're pushing your way to this next camp, you're trying to reclaim territory, you're seeing the effects as like you're able to, you know, conquer areas, and your forces can kind of start to come together. So it's, yeah, I don't know if they reached the full potential with the setting and what they could have done with the context here, but it works as a mechanic, you know?
Yeah.
Well, while you were saying that, I got your missing word there. I would not have remembered this one off the top of my head. It's defluxion.
Okay.
Ooh,
It is the defluxion ethereal manipulator.
Good job getting A&M though.
That. Yeah.
So, before you finish putting all these little deflection devices around, you get an echo. I guess you shared echo with Makoto, which doesn't have. There's no like right up here, so I don't remember what.
Hers are very like conveniently shared with everyone
that's
around
right
her.
there.
Apparently,
Is it? I'm blind.
Yeah, it's the next bullet point. During it, you
Okay.
succeed in disabling the Dalriada, but Makoto falls from the airship, right? So we see that flash forward of the fight. You know, Sid's like, oh, we got to do this. She puts up a shield, and then she falls off. And seemingly dies, because it just fades to black. And she says, please don't talk about this with anyone else. Don't tell them that I'm going to die. And it's like, could you stop doing this, please? Like, how many times have you asked us not to tell people?
All right.
You know how this ends, Makoto.
All right.
yeah, so she has this flash, which
Mhm.
I guess does lean into one thing that I think is really strong about this. I do think some of the characterizations and the like side characters of these quests are really good. And Mikoto is an interesting one because going
Right.
back to the original, I never thought that she would be somebody that would come back or play any sort of role whatsoever ever again. And there was always a lot of mystery about her twin and the possibility that maybe she was her twin and was posing it. Like, there are all these things about her lore that's kind of intriguing.
Oh, and her echo. Oh my
And her
goodness.
echo, which kind of, again, I guess confirmed in a way that echoes can manifest in different iterations to some degree. And, but how far
We definitely
expansive
knew
that is.
though. Yeah.
Yeah.
did
but
it?
it's just-
Did it? Or
Kind
like,
of.
this is one of the places where I actually chalk it up as a broken vase.
Sure.
Oh.
I love a lot of what came out of this story in the again, the big picture mode. But when I think about like the little specifics of how he brought in stuff from around the game, I do wonder if anybody like looked into that and was like, yeah, that's how that works. Because we've been told so far that the echo is like a resonance between souls. What's the other soul? Like, what's the thing she's resonating with? But we know that, like, okay, so Kryl is very sensitive to ethereal traces. So she's able to kind of follow stuff and see stuff, and like that, we saw the way that it manifested when it's kind of like recklessly copy pasted onto Fordola. So it's not always between souls. There's some kind of ethereal stuff going on with it.
Could you?
How she can use that to see through time is a little weird. But if we assume that there's like a determinism to the world, then maybe she's just following etheric determinism in a way.
Right.
You know? Because it took a lot to break determinism for Graha. So that's one excuse I have. The other thing is, though, is that as weird as this is, there's also, they kind of tied the echo possibly to Messiah Thousand Eyes and her seeing all of the eras in advance, which I don't know how that's supposed to work either. So, if Messiah's 1.0 lore, if I don't know how that works, Matsuno can have this. I don't care.
It does feel weird. I mean, I think you could maybe make the argument that she is almost resonating with her own soul at different points.
Sure.
Like, her soul at this point in time, or like in this particular branch of.
This is what I need, more time shenanigans.
Yeah.
And time shenanigans are always a headache and no one loves them. You know what I mean? But like, it could be that like she's almost resonating with these different versions of her soul or different like timelines of her soul. And so when she says like, this always happens, which to me was the big thing where I was like, oh, why are you like this? I hate this so much. Like, which is like, this always happens no matter what. In my head, I was like, well, maybe this particular Mikoto has resonated with like this particular branch of time. And now because of that, like she will we will be in that timeline. You know what I mean? Like, and it's, again, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. It's nonsense a lot of times, but that's kind of how I interpreted it. And then when you get something like this, I know tinfoil hats, and then you get something like you were saying about Messiah and like all the other things there where it's like, well, was she just resonating with other people's souls in different time periods, or like was she like?
I'm at a loss for all that. They have to clean up a lot there before the end. I say have to, but like I'm not their boss. They should clean up a lot in terms of that, because Alexander introduced kind of like hard determinism. Like, Alexander was at multiple places in the timeline, showing that however it is after Alexander changed time, the illusion for us inside of time is that it's always been that way. So the way that it was is gone. And that made a lot of sense to me. That was like one of the few time travel stories that I thought was ever really well told. I thought Alexander nailed it. And then Shadowbringers came along with this completely different idea where there is no determinism, because you can use the rift, which is all time, space, and possibilities condensed into pure chaos, to manifest a different reality. So now we have this branching Y timeline where instead of only one of all the possibilities being manifest, we've got two. And yet we still kind of have hard determinism in the 1.5 branch. I don't know.
So here's my tinfoil hat. It's very truncated. Don't even worry about it. The portion of the story, the beginning of the story, where they go back into Sid's memories. They pull out memories from there, and it's basically an echo that they can run through. So what if people's memories are always with them? Knock and stop over. From the beginning of your life to the end of your life, and your memory is not so much like something that you recall, so much as like your particular timeline. So she has the ability to go back in timeline. She has timeline / memory. She has the ability to go forward in timeline / memory. So she knows.
I could see I can see it.
I'm willing to embrace anything that explains it.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
there are oddities going all the way back. Like in 1.0, your very first echo ever, you pulled an item out of it. That shouldn't be possible. That's never been explained. Like, I'm not gonna like harp on Matsuno-san doing this when they probably don't know themselves all of the details. It's like when people are doing this with Heidelin right now. It's like, well, why didn't she tell you more of what was going on? I'm like, she can't tell you what Square Enix hasn't written. Yeah. You know, like, so I don't want to like throw all this on Matsuno-san, but it is a very interesting way to use the echo. I think it's the first one role players would jump at using. So it's the first that, you know, like if Matsuno-san was brought in and told what it was, I feel like he'd be like, yeah, that's the cool, like he always knows what the role players want to play with first. So I imagine that's what happened, but like anything that makes it work, I'm good with it.
I love that you brought that up because I was literally about to talk about role players because I think Matsuno's imagination does work in that way. And this is like, I want to be super clear because sometimes when people talk about this, especially if they're not role players themselves, and like I am, and I know a lot of us love lore, and I know Zen is, and I know, like, you know, people will be like, oh, role players, they're coming up with stuff out of their butt. And it's like, no, a lot of times people will do a lot of research into facets, right? And then it's all about letting your own imagination build off of that in a way that works with you. And sure, there are some times where people may blatantly ignore certain established things. If they're playing with people that are doing it, that's fine. And then there are other times, I think, where they take concepts that are in the game and then realize them more fully. And a big one that is in Final Fantasy XIV and that many players have is some kind of unique echo for their character. And I kind of love it because whether or not you're in a group that allows that, or, whether or not we're looking at the larger scale of lore within the game, it allows people, again, more of a unique connection and manifestation to the character that they love and how they want to realize them or have them exist in this world, right? And I think that Matsuno is very similar in that, like, his creativity takes these things and then he's, like, spinning off of them. So although we've had these little glimpses of the possible variety of manifestation of echo, and there's even some discussion, that has been the RP community and elsewhere of like, well, maybe back in the past, like with the ancients, they had different skills that have now trickled down in the Division of Souls in a way and all this other stuff, right? Like, and I think it's fun. I think it's hard to realize in the actual story when, again, you're trying to tell like a directed narrative for people in a shared way so that it's not like everybody gets to pick their echo and now you can watch it in cutscenes, like, which would be cool, but like, it's not what we have in 14.
Right.
And yet at the same time, I can't help but think that this was a little bit of Matsuno wanting to be like, why don't we push this idea further? Like,
sure.
I feel like we're in the exact same headspace right now because I was just thinking of the same thing. They talk about how like, oh, there's no, two same manifestations of the echo. And I feel like the degree to which you interpret that line a certain way determines what you think is reasonable and unreasonable in the story. Because I mean, all right, just because it's the first thing that comes to mind because it's like the tail end of a pandemic here, but like no two COVID infections were the same. Everyone had a unique manifestation of COVID, but that doesn't mean that you might get COVID and be able to shoot lightning out of your fingertips. Like there's certain the echo manifests differently for everyone, but it's still the same thing that's doing it. So like no one's just like, oh, my unique manifestation of the echo was only that I could shapeshift into a lime. Like there's no like
I wish that was real.
Limitations.
Can you imagine an NPC that's part of the Scions and everybody's doing their lineup and they're like, what does yours do? Oh yeah, I can track ethereal currents. Wow, super cool. How about you? I can see into the future. How about you? Oh yeah, I just turn into a lime.
They would be my head assassin.
Yeah, exactly.
They'd be so good.
We're gonna send them a fruit basket.
Exactly. All right. I think also.
But yeah, no, like.
Good.
No, I think that there are some times where people are just like, I have this great idea for a unique manifestation of the echo, and if you're missing one or two of the little tiny details about what the echo actually is, it's just like, oh, out the window, it's gone.
Yeah.
So,
I think honestly, that's probably the easiest reasoning for Mikoto's particular thing she's able to do. It's like it's a different echo. When I was talking about the like past and future memory timeline thing, it made me think about Xenos, like and the starfall that he sees. Maybe it was not in the past. Maybe it's in the future. Maybe he has a similar crazy thing going on. Again, tinfoil hat. But I'm kind of hoping we actually do see more similar manifestations that back up this whole thing elsewhere, basically.
Yeah, I think they could go either way. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Aldianaux.
Oh, no. I was just... One last question about the echo, and it's just super forward-thinking. Is this one of the answers they have to give us at the end of the Heidel and Zodiac story? Or no? What do you think?
What is the specific question that we're answering?
How the echo works, where we got it from, why it does it. Do we need that answer in 6.0? Or is it tangential enough? Or maybe it doesn't even involve them. Maybe it's some... that's something that I keep thinking about.
That's actually a good question.
Will they answer it?
I can't answer it myself now that I'm thinking about it. Because, all right, so I feel like we already know enough to know more or less what it is and isn't. We know that it's a resonance between souls because the boundary of your own soul is more permeable, more malleable, and that enables you to have greater etheric sensitivity and potential. And that seems specific enough that you could know what it is and isn't. and yet open enough that they could play with it a bit as we go on.
Right.
Like, they've had prophetic dreams, they've had divinations. So to have an echo like this isn't out of the question, but to have it without any explainer notes just made it feel a little weird. And as I'm
Right.
thinking about like how we go to the end of the story, you're triggering the opposite feeling in me, where I think about how I think about the void, which is where a lot of people come up with these ideas of like, oh, could we use Eden to fix the void?
Yeah.
And the first thing that comes to mind for me is, why would Square Enix ever write out all that plot fuel out of their own story? They use Void Scent for everything. They're not going to fix the void, probably, because then they'd like lose 50% of their plot fuel. So do we explain the echo?
Yeah.
I think they could do either. I think they could do either, right?
Right.
Like, this is one of those things, and I see in chat where like Unknown is saying, didn't Elidibus explain that the echo is like this little manifestation of the limitless power of the ancients?
Right.
Which,
the creation magic.
again, yes, but again, we don't know exactly what that means specifically, right? Like, is it just that, yes, as beings, their souls used to be different, more flexible, larger, there's more ether, all these different things where because like the world was so suffused with ether that it was like people were living in a way that maybe was even closer to primals, right? Like where you were just, there was so much stuff everywhere and it was so plentiful that like now people are with their own abilities, right? Kind of a diminished version of that and their ability to, you know, manipulate Aether and things like that, right? So it's a really vague statement. And I think like what Moose is saying is probably the closest based off of all of the information that we have in the game that makes sense, right? Now, does that need any further explanation? Like, could I see them just being like, oh yeah, this stuff wakes up is a star shower and Highland did it. And then they never touch on it again. And you're just like, well, this is an ambiguous thing in a JRPG that I've just experienced. Or could it be something where we do get that answer? And is it a huge question that I think is still in the game? Yes. Like, I feel as though they could answer it, and they could answer it with whatever encounters with Hydaelyn or Zodiark we have, right? Really nailing it down. But how they do that could be a midichlorian situation as well.
Yeah, and I just... Yeah.
I'm
kind of one
thinking
of those
back,
things where...
I'm thinking back to a quest in 2.0 where they accidentally left like a little bit of the liner notes for the scripting in it. I've seen this posted a couple places. You know how like there's quest scripting where like the NPC dialogue comes up? Well, I guess if in the actual data, it refers to the use of the echo on the Sylph when you get back to the Waking Sands after the massacre there. And the liner note just says, use your contrived psychic power on the dying Sylph to figure out what the hell just happened. So like, knowing that they called the echo contrived psychic power, I'm like, okay, so they didn't have quite the exit strategy for it that I would have, you know, anticipated based on the way it was described. So I'm like, I'm down with whatever they do or don't want to tell us about it in Endwalker, especially now that we know that whatever they write about it as the power of the ancients was probably made up like 2 weeks ago. So like, I'll take what I can get.
I just remember when they first started up the Boja stuff this time around, and they used like a crystal to manipulate the echo and this, that, and I'm just going, gross. I don't know, like for so long the echo has been not simple, but not necessarily a complicated thing to explain. And then they're like, also you can use it this way, and I'm like, too much, get away, get out of here. That's just my opinion.
I love it though, because like I'm the opposite. I like more variety. Like I personally think it's interesting to see how it can be used, because when you think about people, right? Anytime that there's a skill, anytime that there's like a basic function, the way that people will use it can be different. The way the same people will use the same tool, like how you hold a pencil, is really interesting to me. And I was over there so excited when I was like, oh, confirmation for different manifestations, maybe.
Well, we've had that. We've definitely had the confirmation for years and years and years. This extra tool outside to mess with the echo, though, is what got me. I was like,
I know. This felt, though, to me like it was, initially, it felt like it was a way that was interesting to me to tie a lot of this stuff together. And even the mention of like, oh gosh, the Heaven on High Tower and that fragmented group that left Allig, who supposedly were the original, what were they? They're not sages. The group that like taught this and that did this like manipulation of memory, who also created the tower that's Heaven on High. Like, I thought all of that was really fascinating. And then Zen, you gave me, much like the Nautilus theory, even more fodder by being like, and you know how Xenos is also experiencing his own memories? And I'm over here like, oh my gosh, you're so right. It is outside of this content. But I mean, of course, until they officially reinforce this or delineate it, right? Like, we can't say this is absolutely or not. And is it more likely that, yes, this will be kind of a contained thing that just is a weird blip? Yes, I think probably.
Yeah.
So,
you know,
I didn't even think about any of that, like, at all. Like, I saw the crystal focus and I was just like, yes, after years of guns and flying cars and spaceships, like, we are back to just stone and light. That's my fantasy. That's
Magic,
my preferred fantasy magic. Like, stone and light. Yes.
fair. So
I was too excited about that.
Yeah. So moving on with the actual story. Your companions this time aren't totally blind to the fact that some Echo stuff just happened. They're like, hey, what happened? And you basically get interrupted, and Jazzlebean shows up.
Jazzlebean.
What is it? Basilian? Shows up, and he...
No, it's Jazzlebean.
Jazzlebean. I think that's a fusion word. Jazzlebean.
Fusion, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
He shows up and is like, hey, when we finally get Misia? I don't know. Or, do you want to kill her? Or, like, what do you want to do about all this bad stuff?
I want to kiss her on her mouth.
But your choices are basically murder this murderer, or, like, maybe, like, a trial or something. And that becomes a semi-important choice for later on in the story. When you actually have to do it. At that point, we finish placing all the dams. And, this is actually a cutscene that I missed. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You walk in on Lilja telling Mikoto that she should tell Sid that she has some fuzzy heart feelings for him. So, like, I've seen all these people talking about Sid and Mikoto, and I'm like, did that happen? I guess I skipped this cutscene.
Yeah, maybe this is the thing we should talk about. I mean, it's not, I don't know, it's not like massive repercussions for lore, but
Sure.
in a sense, is it also, it's interesting, especially in the context of some of the, was it a FanFest question? Or an interview question in the follow-up from FanFest. There was an interview talking about, would you ever put in romance lines for, like, player characters with the NPCs? And there was an answer, I believe, from Yoshida-san, but if it was somebody else on the team, just tell me. But, like, basically saying we're very conscious and very careful about how we orchestrate, like, the lives of these characters. And so, like, we don't want to shut out players from being able to connect in a way like that, but we also don't want to make, like, these characters beholden to some players' perception of, like, them being their one and only, and, like, have that be something that would compromise their own integrity as, like, unique individuals in this, and, like, also in regards to other NPCs. And it's funny to me because with this one with Sid, again, it kind of felt a little bit, and I do not have a problem with this, as the ship sirens go by here in the distance. Sorry, everybody. Apparently some people do have problems with this. But, like, I don't mind that they did this ship, and I feel like Matsuno probably was just like, I've always had a crush on Sid, and I'm going to make this cute girl do this romance. I mean, maybe, I don't know, but, like, love is kind of a theme. Of exactly. But
the reactions to this were wild. Like you're saying. Like, one thing that I noticed was a little lacking in it was that people can have a crush on whoever they want. It doesn't mean anything about Sid if Makoto has a crush on him. Anything at all. Like, it's Matsuno-san's character. Matsuno-san's character has a crush. Okay. But, like, the number of reactions that were, I mean, they were all over the place. There was like a pool that was like, you can't make any sort of connections between characters like that in a side story. Like Sid's not his character. You can't do that. There were ones that like, doesn't she know Sid's gay? Like,
I mean, yes,
so
him and Nero, come on,
Yeah.
it's obvious.
him and Nero have a love-hate ship. We all know it. But like, yeah, no, there was just like, there was so a diverse reaction to this one, and they were all very passionate.
Yeah,
Yes.
no matter what.
What's funny is that I honestly shipped Lilia and Mikoto way more. I was like, this would have been far more compelling to me. These two have such an incredible rapport. That like part where even like she's concerned about her and she takes off her glasses and is like, tell me what really happened. I was like, they should love each other, but Square Enix won't give me this. I'm like, please. We got so close with Guy and Reen. So close.
In the actual like Garland Ironworks. The one who basically runs it.
Jesse?
Yes.
Jesse.
I always
Jesse,
thought
right?
Jesse and Sid. Because she basically like runs his life.
I mean, it's not unusual though. We did see the same kind of reaction with Ishtola and what's cute blue boy? Blue flower? Runar. He's so
Yeah,
cute.
Runar.
They're so cute. And everybody wanted to kill him. And I was like, he's a good boy. Leave him alone.
He's a nice man. It's not his fault. He likes the cute cat girls. So do you. Chill out.
But
yeah, people were very
here's a question
passionate.
that doesn't matter.
Okay.
Is Sid Eorzea's most eligible bachelor? Yes? Or is
maybe?
Is it like Aymeric? Is it?
Oh yeah.
Is Aymeric even
It's
a bachelor?
Aymeric.
Yeah.
It's gotta be Aymeric. I
Yeah.
mean, well, we don't know though, Aymeric, you know.
Or maybe
I mean,
maybe Astinian. Some Astinian.
No,
see?
Astinian's a stinky, grumpy man.
should-
Look, I love him. But he cannot be the most eligible.
not-
What does
you're
he have
not
to
wrong.
offer?
You're not-
We should
Nothing.
put
He
this
just
to a
wanders
vote, I
around.
Put it to a vote.
I think we need the community on this one.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Do a poll in chat. I mean, maybe Sid. I don't know. I do feel like
Like I
it's
said,
Emmerich,
it doesn't
though.
even matter. I'm sorry to bring it up, but yeah, you
He's
know.
married to his work.
I
Yeah.
miss not beard
Yeah.
face Sid. I know a lot of people like his beard face, but I miss unbeard face Sid. Go away, beard.
I mean, Hien's good too. I think Hien could be a real candidate
you know, I
here.
didn't even
People
think about
just don't even pay attention to Hien, but he's
Little
also
son,
very
come
good.
on.
Little son is not the most eligible. He's the most scorned bachelor in all of Eorzea. And besides, he's already in love with his right-hand man, and
Yeah,
nobody
true.
can convince me otherwise.
Yeah.
He's a confused.
This is a really important question, though, and I do actually think we could do an entire cast on this. So, Aldianaux, thank you.
Next week, episode 200 of Aetheryte Radio. Most eligible bachelors of Eorzea. We could do bachelorettes too.
What has science wrought?
All right. Is that all we want to talk about? Our shipping for now? Okay.
For now.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
So, Mikoto apparently reminisces about Moonbryda.
Yeah.
That's cute. I'm really sad I missed this cutscene now. I love me some Moonbryda Urianger.
Mm-hmm.
Also good.
So she pushed her to find someone that she cherished more than her books. However, Mikoto says that she only had feelings of respect and admiration for Sid. Just like she had for Moonbryda.
Mm-hmm.
Moonbryda was taken from us far beyond her time. So I was very pleased to see this because once again, I feel like I just want to like go hug Matsuno because I feel like Matsuno is like big fan as well of the game. And Matsuno was also
he
like,
plays.
he was like, why'd you do Moonbryda like this? So he's like, I'm just going to put a line in here about Moonbryda and we're going to remember that she exists and is important and is valid. And then that's what we're going to do.
That poor girl.
I know. But this was nice. I mean, like, it's always been interesting with her because she is the kind of like background character that in theory, right? Like how effectively I think in the overall narrative they've really communicated Moonbryda's impact on the other characters. I don't know. Like I think there are some moments that we get, particularly with Urianger, where sometimes when it's convenient, they seem to try to remind us that Moonbryda once lived and died and was really good friends with everybody. But again, it's tough because it's like there's not a ton of other things or moments we shared or lived with her beyond that one struggle that culminated like in her demise that really gives us that connection. So I was glad to see more of this, especially as maybe we look ahead to Endwalker and it's possible that she gets brought up again in Sherlion, but
Sure.
I hope they bring her up again.
I struggled to rationalize everything that happened with Moonbryda to myself as someone who tries to like make sense of the story and find a satisfying way to interpret it. Because when she first showed up, it was like, wow, this is really cool. All right, so there's a Rugadine on the Scions now.
Yeah.
It's a woman. We've got this badass that complements certain people and shakes up the mix, and oh, she's gone. And then I had to try to like explain it to myself. It's like, okay, this is character development for the Scions, because at the time they hadn't had a lot of it. You know, we interacted with them, but we didn't really know a lot about who they were. So I was like, maybe it's like this because this ain't about us. We're seeing the Scions grow and through their connections and their suffering, and that we're just there for them during this time. And these are their stories. This ain't about us. But ever since then, they keep bringing her up like, oh, we shouldn't have killed her. Like,
Right.
Because the timing wasn't great on it if they wanted us to care about her, that she was dead. The timing was very poor. We didn't have enough time to connect to her at all. For her to like, we got like I didn't really think about her potential as a Scion until after she was dead, because I was so focused on, you know, let's learn a little bit about her. Let's see what she brings to the table. Oh, she's gone from it. Like, so.
I personally was always not super invested in her because she was such a like a quick just she's here, she's gone, and I was shocked to see so many other people in the community just like latch on to Moonbryda. And I get why she's an interesting character, but I felt like I didn't have time, like you said, to get to know her to really care a whole lot. When I think about her though, like that reflection of what happened because to Urianger J because of her sudden appearance and loss, I really like that little portion. So over time, she's become more of a cool thing to me. But so quick. Why you do contrived thing, Essie, to poor broken lady?
It's just sad, you know. A lot of people who really interact with the lore love these type of characters, like Moonbryda are involved before we got into it, you know, that sort of thing. And then the people who kind of skim across the surface, which is fine. You don't have to dig deep. But you, as someone who's into the lore, just want people to like the characters that you found compelling as well. And when they don't give them enough time to catch on with, I don't want to say general public, but those people who just kind of skim across the lore, it feels worse, right? Because it's like, oh, if only you could have seen what she could have done. But we're supposed to have that feeling, you know? Maybe that's what it was all about, which sucks. But
yeah,
it is.
It's totally fair, right? I mean, and I do like the point, like Moose, I think you're right in that it is a moment that is meant for the Scions and that has like big repercussions for them. And Aldianaux, I agree with what you're saying in the sense that like, not even like for people who, like when you say just skim, like you were sort of, you know, hinting at, it's like, if you are just playing those quests, right? Like if you are just standalone doing that and not making a whole bunch of other suppositions and doing all sorts of other stuff, right? Like, yeah, you don't get a lot about her. But I do think that it's important too, like you were saying, Moose, that there were some really interesting contrasting things that she does, and that there are certain characters or character archetypes in this game that I think just don't get featured the same way that others do. And Rugadins are kind of a big one, to be completely honest. Like, Rugadin characters are few and far between in our
They haven't even modeled Rugadin children. Ever.
Yeah, it's super weird. And it's one of those things where a lot of people will argue this, saying like, well, that's because they're the least played race and all sorts of stuff. But you have to acknowledge that, like, from a perspective of this world and the stories it tells, there's probably a reason that they're the least played. Like, there's not other stuff in there, like, engaging people to find them cool or interesting or appealing or, like, all sorts of things, right? And it's only been Yeah, it's like a feedback loop. Like, we've only even semi-recently started to see female Rugadins even make it on the, like, summer festival posters and things. And that was after a lot of feedback from the community. And I think it is important in these stories and in different areas to show different builds of people, particularly with female characters. And, I mean, look, we love Merlveeb, but she is not a character that's like right there with you in the trenches doing stuff all the time, who is somebody that you're bonding with and that you're spending these journeys with. And I would love to see more characters that are like that break the mold a little bit and end up in this main lineup for us. And at this point, with like this wrap up, I think the characters we have right now are probably the big ones we'll see, and then future stories will probably introduce us to more. But yeah, it'd be great if we got some more glimpses with her and what she even did in Trelion or something with that, you know? It'd be cool, and I think it would build on that growth for the Scions.
All right. We go from cutesy town over to Garlean stuff going on. And we see a scene of Lion and Menenius overseeing the Allian relic. Menenius sends Lion out to the battlefield while cursing Sicinius for leaving them there when this was all in his plan.
Right.
Guys, I feel like I missed a big part of the story. Help me.
Oh
no.
I felt the same way when they said Sicinius, and I was like, who the heck is that?
Okay.
And then I was like, oh right, I do remember. And then he shows up later.
Okay. We then join Sid and the others again. And we found that the relic from the 4th Legion was uncovered, so Sid formulates a plan to ignite ceruleum stored in the Dalriada to disable it. They gon' do some sabotage.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll need to redirect Aether to overcharge the crystal focus nearby using an Aether wave amplifier. So we repurpose the dams, I guess, at that point, yeah?
Yeah. It was like, is there anything interesting about this? Nah, kinda. It's just, yeah, we put energy in the thing and it blow up. That's it.
Cool. So then they go out on an airship with the amplifier and Makoto. Why they would do this when she knows what's gonna happen, who knows? They let him use, Bwagi lets them use his airship, the Lacer, which I guess is Tornado in Dalmascan.
I just love that they added that note, so I had to add it here too.
Tornado. I think it's funny, the point that Moose was telling us earlier where, he doesn't have naming conventions, but he does have words, apparently, for what tornado is in Dalmascan. And then with the plan set, it falls on you and Lilia to place the dam at the Aether current closest to the Dalriada. So you can explode things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the only thing of note from this, I mean, it's just plot, right? So, like, this is just stuff they have to do the thing in the area, right? The one thing that I do think is kind of interesting is that from the get-go, I have found the Garlean unit and this group that are working there to be really intriguing in and of themselves. The ways that they have, like, subverted the structure, the way that they have decided to, like, re-envision what it means to have their own empire. All of these kinds of things, I think, are really, really intriguing. And I would have loved to get some more. And it is unfortunate that because, like, we just see these kind of tantalizing little cutscenes that are the, like, meanwhile, in the baddies' camp.
Right.
And it's like, you get these little moments where it's like, Menenius, Sicinius, Menenius, and you're like, who even are these people anymore? Which one? And that was the one that I saw that one time in that one cutscene who did the one thing, or maybe they were in this chain of critical engagements, or like, I don't know how they could have done this, but like, if they'd done something where, I don't know, even like working with Messia or like something would have given us insight into the structure, the culture, the group that's forming there. Because I really like the premise that they seem to be based on almost, right? That like you have these two groups, a group that's fighting to reclaim this land, the heritage of this land, but then the heritage of this land actually being corrupt, having social inequality, having these issues that like led to all these other problems within it. And then this group that's made up of the people who are there now, the culture. And like, sure, those leaders may or may not have selfish reasons. They may or may not be doing things that are actually good for everyone. But the way they're pitching it is like, hey, this is all of us and we're here. And why go back to the old regime? We'll make our own regime. Like, we'll make our own place. And it will be something that is based off of equality. Those two viewpoints I would have loved to have seen be more of like an emphasis. so that
Right.
when we got these characters, like we knew who they were, we actually had some. I just like I think it's such a cool thing here, that it's kind of unfortunate that a lot of those details I just don't think could be realized within the scope of this content. You know?
For me, it came off as a little bit of a nicer echo of original Gaius. Him being like, I'm going to take over here and I'm going to run this way because this is how it should be. And they're basically doing the same thing, except they're leaning towards, equality a little bit more. And I just see this group of them sitting over there going, yeah, we were doing that. Garlemald should be like more like this thing way before Gaius and all those other people trying to take over now.
Yeah.
They're the hipsters of Garlemald.
Garlemald. Other cooler Garlemald. That's what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
Garlemald number 2, bigger, better than ever. City.
So, back on this airship, Mikoto does indeed fall out, just like her vision prior. But the blacked out part that we don't see is Fran swooping in. We haven't seen Fran in a while, but here she is, and she's on a cool-ass air bike that you can get, too.
Yes.
So she swoops in and saves the day. Poor Lilia also gets injured down on the ground.
Yeah.
And so they all basically hop back on the airship and are like, job well done. This could have been bad, but it wasn't. See you later.
Yeah.
And head off while the Dalriata is disabled. At that point, they're like, hey, it's your turn. And you get to run Dalriata.
Yeah, there's a little, what was the talk with Lion and Menenias, that little bit. That was fun.
Yeah.
Basically Menenias
Some
is
dad vibes.
Yeah. I love this part just because we get to see his face, right?
Yeah.
Now, I wasn't paying attention to previous Boja. So I didn't know if I was supposed to know he was an Elysian or not. So I put that note there. Because I'm an Elysian, and I had to put the note there.
Yeah, we know, I believe, and Moose might have more specific details about this, right? But they have apparently been like, screw the old structure to some degree, and they've repurposed, because for a lot of people who may or may not have delved deep or read the lore books, right? There's actually a table within the game that lists the actual ranking and like progression of Garlean forces and soldiers. And there's this interesting kind of thing where if you are a non-Garlean native, right, and you've been brought into the Garlean Empire because of this conquest and imperialism, right, you can work your way up, but only to a certain tier, and like that's the like highest you'll be able to go. But hey, it's better than basically just being dirt under somebody's heel, you know? And it's actually pretty cool because it does draw from real like historical systems of conquest, right? That this used to be something that also happened in certain nations, maybe the Roman Empire, I want to say, or things like that. But with that as well, this group we know has seemed to have subverted that structure, where we do see people who are non-natives who have now been elevated. So again, like we're seeing them actually seem to deliver on what they claim to be saying. In theory, I mean,
I have a little in-world to say about it, but like I'd want to talk about out-of-world first, because I feel like this is what's going to put kind of the leash on our speculation a little bit. So first off, I think this idea of breaking that hard rule, like non-Garleans have a glass ceiling, I feel like that's just Matsuno-san's role player brain coming out again. Like, how can I have the most fun with this? Like, I'm just going to break rules and do whatever I want. And then part of it is this idea that, like, because we're in isolated content, we can't just, like, the last thing any like players, real people from the real like Earth want to see ever again is, Sermet floors of the Garleans or hexagonal platforms of the Allagons. We're done. We have seen too many castrums, too much coil. We're done. So if we're going to take on the Fourth Legion, there has to be some diversity there. If we're doing 3, I don't remember like the total number of what things were battlefields versus trials, but whatever. But like, if we're going to be doing all this content, like Eureka level content with just the Fourth Legion as our enemy, they can't be standard issue Garlemald. They have to be something more fun. Which is why I think they put such an emphasis on, their mage cadres and their beast masters and stuff like that, because that will then when we go out into the field, we actually have cool shit in the field and not just another wave of Magitech and Sermet floors. So I feel like that's what drove a lot of the lore, was a combination of Matsuno-san having fun and the need for just something interesting in the field.
I love that point. That's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say, I agree. And I definitely think it could be a facet. And yet, I do think it's also, whatever compelled it, I think that it still does make a lot of sense, right? You have this group that has been isolated for many reasons away from the rest of what we would consider to be the Garlean war machine. And even more so as like liberation movements have cut them off from areas like Doma and like these other land masses that sort of connect in between, right? So you have these people who've been serving underneath this structure, but now suddenly have this opportunity to take control of it for themselves in a way that they want to, right? That's a reflection of how they themselves could get power in this region, what the people in this region might be wanting, all these things, right? So like Matsuno-san having fun, I definitely think is a thing we see everywhere, and I love it. And do it. Have fun with this, bring some new ideas to it, because you have to like be passionate about what you are doing and excited about the possibilities. But I do actually also think that this, whatever contributed to it, actually did give us an interesting, multifaceted look at, again, what it means to be a conquered nation. Because this isn't something that, like, we haven't seen in history, where, like, certain geographical areas that have had influence from other groups that have moved in and conquered or have, like, melded different cultures have had their own offshoots of culture that have happened outside of that. And, I mean, it maybe makes it more confusing for people who are looking for really specific, like, hard rules within the world. But I think when it comes down to it, that a lot of times rules are what a people and culture agree on. And the way that those are established and used and integrated in society depends very much, not only geographically, but also with the actual groups and cultures that are a part of it. So I think it's actually really neat to have this, whether or not Matsuno was just like, YOLO, or like, I don't know.
Well, this is where my, like, vase cleanup brain comes in, like where we talk about the in-world stuff, because I think there's plenty of excuses to be made. I think just the loyalty to Solace, that if he said this, it went, So the first thing that comes up to mind for me is Solace had to know that this would go wrong someday. That there would be either it would foment dissent at home, because he had given privilege to someone who kind of undermined the narrative of who you give privilege to and why, and that you would start to see other discussions around that, or that this group of people would eventually be like realizing what Garlemald really feels and is really up to, and just be peace, taking the Legion going. So like I feel like now that we know Solace was just Emmett Selk, that this was one of the many plans he had on the table for, if he needs to send some stuff sideways someday. Gabron's a great option.
Yeah. It could also be he kind of cherry-picked and was like, you'll probably be a dissenter. Right. You're probably a dissenter.
Yeah.
And he made the group and was like, for now, you are over there not dissenting in this country that I need to run a certain way. And then, like you said, later on, if he needs them, they're all there together.
I think that's why it's so important to that they highlighted how loyal Gabron's father, Noah's father, the original Gabron, was to Solus, how tight those two were, and that he did have a dream of kind of liberating that area and founding a new nation, but he was not entirely anti-Garlemald all the way either. So like you had that idea that as long as that relationship was good, you had a loyal legion. But he's gone. He has no love for Varus. So this is the perfect time for that to go sideways.
Yeah, to me, it's a MXL contingency plan. If Garlemald falls, he has another kingdom right now with the same technology that he could just, fail right over to that.
So easy it is to clean up vases. One guy wants a non-Garlean legatus, and we've got all this.
Right.
Oh my god. Emmett's a genius. Holy crap.
Right, of course.
We don't even
Matsuno
know
just
that's
needs a
what he
couple
really
friends
was.
to just make sure that nothing's left broken on the floor. That's all he needs.
On an utterly unrelated note,
Yes.
I just greatly appreciated somebody falling out of the sky and into Fran's arms.
Yeah.
And I just want to be like
Certainly.
very clear about that in this particular piece of content. Feel very good about it. Wish it could have been the
Yeah.
player character, but I do feel very good about this.
Oh, sorry, man.
But we'll talk about it at the end. But like, Fran showing up, and then that tweet just make me very, very sad.
Oh, don't know why you
Yeah.
used
Right.
that
Oh, dude.
again.
Sorry.
I was already about to say that.
Yeah.
Like, because I see a comment in chat and I'm like, yeah, we're gonna get into this at the end. Because
Yeah.
like we're not just going through Zadnor, we're tying back to all the things that connect to it, kind of tendrily.
We gotta get to the plot. Through the plot.
And
We're almost done.
And as we talk about what's coming up at the end, yeah, Fran's return and what she was saying and the way that connects to some of the notes, I can foresee the entire plot of the third act, and there's no third act.
Yeah.
Nope.
What do I do with that?
I don't know. It is. I really, really, really feel like they must have canceled a third portion. Like, because this just feels like such a specific reintroducing that character and thread that we had. You know, like we know she's working with that resistance, the unnamed leader that many of us speculated must be like Ash or something. You know, like we know that there seems to be this group that is trying to work behind the scenes to do this. So to introduce her here, yes, it could just be kind of like a nod to her being in the game and a little bit of a nostalgia thing, but like it really did feel like the setup for a third act, and I don't know.
I'm like when we get to the end, I don't think I'm gonna be able to stop myself from outlining where I thought it was going. So like I'll
I'm here for
outline
it.
that, and here's what we do. If anybody likes that idea, we just bully Naoki Yoshida.
Yeah.
He's a people pleaser. He gives the people what they want. We will figure out kind of what would be a good or bad idea for how to go forward with this. And we just all bully him through the in-game suggestions box.
Yeah.
bully him with love.
Yes. With love.
Yes. Yeah. Well, no. Like,
Serenade him.
I don't think we've ever had to like say anything to Yoshida-san other than, hey, this would be really cool. We all kind of want this. And
Yeah.
he's like, do I have the budget for that? Like,
Right.
that's kind of how it's always been. So I feel like if enough people were like, yeah, I'd really like closure to this storyline, and hopefully specify closure so Matsuno-san doesn't come back, wrap up all these plot threads, sew 50 more that we'll never get the answer to, and leave again. Like, so yeah, I think if everybody was like, hey, we just really want closure for this, we could find something to do. But let's keep going.
Yes, okay, so,
Yeah.
a couple of things I skipped over. They start a self-destruct sequence in Dalriada. I don't remember if we knew that or not when we go in, presumably. And Lion calls him a coward, Menenius, but that he might as well die here with the hope of claiming Bozia. So heartwarming. Anyway, once you go... Huh?
A sword comes and breaks Misija out,
Oh, that's right, yes.
out of jail.
The sword can just do what
sword.
it wants. They like
just
had it locked
teleported
up.
there.
Yeah, and it's like, nah, I'm really extra, and so I don't want to be here anymore. And it goes to its chosen avatar to get the heck out. She disappears right out of prison. Nobody probably even notices, and we see her later, just way later.
Yeah.
Entering the Dalriada. Let's try and do this part fast.
Okay. No problem.
We get a bunch of bosses that we had outside, with a bunch of annoying names to pronounce. Sartenvois. Maybe he's Ellison. Who knows? That's possible here. We just saw when he took his hat off. Somebody says, "Bosh, I pray you're watching?" Question mark.
Yeah. He says it
Okay.
before he dies.
Oh.
It
Do
was
we
just
wanna-
a cool note.
Okay. And we can talk about that later when we get to the field note. Unless we
Yeah,
want to bring that up
definitely.
now. No, okay. Second boss is Gilbrisbert, which is such a funny name. He uses Aetheryte to become Cuchulainn, basically.
Again.
But like an even more hilarious version of Cuchulainn. And that's the one where you have to turn into a slime and he like bounces around the room on you and you just get flat. It's pretty good. Then we have to do security corridors, which are lasers, and you have to like watch these screens and not tell, like, there's a group that has to stand on a button and tell the two corridors whether they're supposed to stand on the right side or the left side.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. The third boss is Menenius in a power suit named Saunion, also known as Saloferum, a heavy-handed thrown javelin used in Roman times. Okay.
I really like, this is what I go crazy about.
Maybe you should be explaining this part.
No, it's fine. There's just a lot of Roman tie-ins. Like, this is just a type of weapon that he's in. That's it.
So you're fighting, basically...
Didn't even notice
the
name. Nope.
Oh.
Didn't even notice
Anytime-
the name. That's a really good catch. I struggled with one of the mechanics at first with him because I didn't notice that it like traces his spinaroonie path on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And I just completely forgot to analyze anything about him because I was trying to dodge it as a Gundam spinaroonie.
Yeah,
Yep.
I freaking hate that part.
If it's a mech and it has a name, I'm going to look up the name.
Oh.
Period.
I love
It's
it. I love
it's a
it.
good rule, man.
All right, so we have Power Monkey Armor Guy, and then Lion tags in with Dawan the Younger. Guy has multiple giant griffins.
Yeah.
Isn't it even? Yeah, okay. That's pretty cool, and I'm jealous.
Yeah.
Once we take them down, we finally get to the armament itself, I believe. And it breaks out.
Yeah.
Because
Of course.
it wouldn't be fair if you could just beat it up while it was there, right?
Before
Who
we
would've
get to the armor, I'm gonna highlight just kind of what I really enjoyed about the Dalriada push,
Sure.
which was that all of these bosses felt thematic to the grand vision story.
Sure.
You have to read the field notes for it all to kind of click. But Sartenvoir was part of like the Landis mage cadres from back in the day. So like bringing all the Landis people together is part of what made me like, oh,
I
there's
know.
more to this. Because, all right, everybody in this group, those are the Landis crew. Those are the people from Gabranth's homeland. That's Sartevoir, that's Lion, that's
The mage
Gabranth, that's,
Yeah.
So they went out of their way to bring all of these people together, and to see them in the final push was amazing. And especially just also thinking for an excuse to bring in, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Gilbriber?
Oh, yeah.
I'm never had to read these out loud before. today.
Gilberspear.
They sound normal in my head. Gilberspear. Yeah, that's a good
Gilbert's
sound.
Depends on how French you want to be with it.
Yeah.
Gilbert. Having him be like a cultist that was obsessed with like the evolution lore and finding an excuse to shove in a couple more of those 12 espers. Like, yeah, this is part of why I want a final act, because it's all coming back to Landis and the espers, and we got 4 espers we need to do, and Landis never came back, and I'll get to it in a minute.
No, I mean, you're right. And even in previous portions, probably some of my favorite content and culmination of content have been these instances. Like, I think they just did a great job with all of the like bonus and unique content that we got with these instanced pieces of content. The fights are varied. Like you said, they're thematically appropriate. There's some really interesting lore behind all the bosses. They feel varied and creative. Like, I really think that like out of the entire collaboration in like Boja specifically, encompassing both parts, that was really like the shining triumph, because there's so much in those fights and there's so much with those characters. I mean, even now as I pull up Sartevoir's like his entire thing, and I'm like looking at the Mage Knight, I'm looking at all these like, references to, the Republic of Landis and all these different tidbits of lore that are crammed in one single field note entry. And yet, I think they're really well backed up in an experiential way through the journey that you've taken throughout all of this content. Like, with this perspective, you can go back and you can do the critical engagements that feature him. You can look at his dialogue. You can come into this fight. And like, that narrative trail is such a creative and like wonderful way to tell this story, and I love it.
That's make or break for me, because that is the difference, in my opinion, in the way of show don't tell that we see as like kind of a stark contrast between 12 and 13, where 13 has a great data log. There is a lot of great world building in that data log. I really like the world of 13, but the experience of it was a little frustrating to be in hallways for all of the open content and to have to read everything in the data log afterwards, is what it felt like to me at the time. Whereas 12 and this had a really good balance of you could see it and experience it and then make sense of it through the data log. And being able to go back and do the content again once I was able to make sense of it and see these patterns like Sartivar's journey and kind of what they've been through in the background, that was good stuff.
Right.
Okay. So getting back to the armament
The last
itself.
boss.
Yes. I actually really liked the arena for this one, because for me it called back to the last couple in Praetorium. And but it also had the more Dalmascan Garlean legions touch on it. So visually it called back for me, but it felt like in the right place. So that I really liked.
Like a fusion of the cultures, like it's supposed to at that point.
Yeah, sort of like how we thought we might see with Alamigo, but didn't.
Right. Exactly.
No, get that hit in.
I had to just like do a quick low blow and then.
I'm still salty as hell that we didn't get to see kind of the facets of the cultures of Alamigo and the blending of the cultures after the. Yeah, I'm still salty. Yeah, good, fair hit, touche.
Yes. And this is actually, I think, of note within this content, because I think this is one area where Matsuno shines as a creator. Matsuno's like narrative and storytelling features a lot on like going back to 12 and things, right? It's like high fantasy throwbacks, but also in a world that's kind of like this unique hybrid of almost like more of a steampunk technology feel, and like it's really unique. But within all of that, because they're also, oh my gosh, again, I'm a big nerd, but because I also really like breaking down the language, right? The way that he writes also shows like an attention to narrative detail that draws even back. We talked about Shakespeare last week. We'll talk about it again this week. The Shakespearean stuff, or even other writers, historical writers, in the way that they make use of alliteration and the way that they make use of specific. There are very specific grammatical effects that are used to increase like certain. I'm trying to figure out how to convey this in a very specific way. Like certain like devices that you use in grammar that particularly historically would communicate different stakes. So like the easiest example that I can explain, because I have a theater background again, is that when you have these alliterations or these repetitions of sound, they are meant to be read aloud if it's a piece of theater, right? In such a way that the momentum builds through the line. Each time you hit it, it goes further and further and faster. And like his attention to historical detail, in a sense, both in writing and also in how he realizes landscapes, is phenomenal, which is why we get these, legions. We get these like, the like Roman influence. We get the political things. We get these cities that are a mashup of cultures and periods and all sorts of things. And I think that in a way, his influence realized this portion of like this kind of cultural fusion and the like higher political shenanigans within it in a historical way that manifests more visibly lore-wise and in like the landscaping and things like that as well. Whereas maybe some of the team that handled some of the Alamigo concept didn't quite have as much of a perspective on. I mean, I'm sure they acknowledged it, right?
Sure.
But you know what I mean? Like it feels as though that's his strength.
And I'm really glad to hear you kind of like give Matsuno-san credit for his attention to detail in those kind of arenas.
Right.
Because I feel like he gets a lot of criticism for his attention to detail in the actual execution of like, say, cutscenes, where people aren't really coming from or going to anywhere. They're like teleporting in and out. They come out of nowhere. They're in, they're out. Like there's a lot of places where he's just like, it's a video game. We're having fun. Like, big picture stuff, guys, big picture stuff. But he really has a great attention to detail in terms of the way he builds it. And I think to hear someone give him credit for that is refreshing.
I have to piggyback with something that... So, Dalriada, is a Gaelic kingdom from the 6th and 7th centuries. And it was run by Gabran MacDomanagert. I cannot say that name.
Oh, yeah.
But just saying.
What?
Yeah. Historical
Aldianaux
attention to
bring
detail.
Yeah.
it. Oh my gosh.
Huh.
That's
So we might
fascinating.
be seeing even more of a rebuild of
Sure.
his old ideas, because like I don't know how many people watched this particular thing, but when he was talking about his inspiration for Return to Ivalice and how he was going to build that area of the map, his idea was that he wanted to create a place where Ivalice was Garlemald's King Arthur, where it was a little bit of history, a little bit of mythology. To some people, it was almost a religion somehow. That like that's what he wanted to rebuild the War of the Lions as, was Garlemald's King Arthur. And when I look at this kind of stuff, this really pulls it all together, especially when you're starting to see kind of like the blurring of mythology and
Sure.
reality in these names and stuff like that. So I think we might be seeing some of where his mind was originally at when this stuff came up.
I mean,
Yeah.
absolutely. And this is stuff that I think also puts into perspective, like you said, some of those shortcomings. I mean, even when you look at things like the actual A Song of Ice and Fire books, right? George R. R. Martin, Tolkien, exactly the same. These were other fantasy creators that were particularly fascinated with mythology, particularly fascinated with history, language, society, political issues, right? Like the War of the Roses is a really big one for George R. R. Martin. So with that in mind, many of the pitfalls of these creators are that sometimes the absolute details bog down what is happening because like the in the moment momentum can sometimes be lost for the like, you're never gonna believe it, I found this amazing thing about King Arthur and I'm gonna put it in for 50 pages.
Exactly.
I got really into this one man walking through the woods, so I wrote 5 chapters about it. It's like, oh, sweet Lord. It's funny, but like,
Yeah.
at the same time, I think we have to appreciate some of these details because like, I think this also gives you a different way to appreciate and engage with the lore in this world.
Right.
Aldianaux, thank you for bringing this historical research today because I had not drawn these connections on like a lot of the more historical context. And yet it's very Matsuno and I should have looked for it in the first place. You know what I mean?
That's
a
why
mix-
I wanted to start building that before we talked about Diablo armament, because Diablo armament feels kind of tacked onto that. Just like right after all of that cool buildup, it's just like, hey, what if we had this really cool Diablos themed robot from Alag out of nowhere? And it's like, well, that's really, really cool, but that's about all we can say about it too. Like, so I wanted to kind of start a little early on building up that stuff, because Diablo Armament was a really fun, really cool fight. But having anything to do with anything, not as much.
Right.
It did.
You know.
Did call back to Allian
Sure.
stuff. It was like, hey, you know this other stuff over here we haven't talked about that much this time. There's some of it, and they're using it still too. You know they already do that.
I appreciate the Fourth Legion's commitment to tracking down and using whatever they can get in their environment. Like, I think it fits especially into Matsuno's like Legends theme, that they're not just digging up Ivalice, they're digging up Alog, they're digging up Goog, they're digging up anything they can get their hands on, and just kind of being like, what kind of black market antiques can I cause trouble with today?
I hate to make
Exactly.
this parallel, but it's a parallel that has been pretty solid.
I think
in the
I know
game
where it's
itself.
going.
Nazis,
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Garleans, and Nazis. There's a lot of parallels there, and the Nazis historically looked for religious and magical artifacts to see if they could find / use them.
It's there really is 3 layers of it, because of the way we look at this stuff in the modern era. Garlemald was originally supposed to be in the role of, I'm not saying it's based on, they're in the role of Persia. Because Eorzea is based on, or being in the role of, as less than based on, Greece. Which is why you see a lot of that ancient Greek theme coming back in Shadowbringers and Endwalkers, because Eorzea was originally based on ancient Greece, where you have this group of city-states that have been kind of uniting and fighting, but almost caught up in their own stuff. And then this big empire comes in from the off, and they all have to unite and fight against this empire together. So that was the original role Garlemald was in. It was going to be our Persia. But then it takes on all these roles of Rome, And then half of its behaviors are what we associate imperial stuff with today. Empires and atrocities. The German Empire is what we go back to. And then, of course, we inevitably end up back at the Nazis every time.
Yep.
Even in
And
the
yet-
uniform.
I mean, yes, and like it is something, right? And it's partly too why when we've talked about like the influence of imperialist mindsets or these kinds of invasionary forces and or the themes that Stormblood kind of glosses over, but then like you get
Bounces
some
right
stuff
off.
in the epilogue, but then you get some, like we do see certain characters that really embody this, and I think they have embraced it far more with things like the weapons quests. And even here with some of this, where you're realizing, like, if we're going to portray something like this, that particularly historically, in any setting, right? Even going back to ancient civilizations that did the same, the Roman Empire that did the same. Like, if you're going to look at these different conquering nations, you can't deny the actual ramifications that they had, right? And, like, so it's totally fair to make that comparison, Zen, correct. And it's also very fair to say that if we're going to be tackling and if they tackle these kinds of things, there has to be a discussion of the actual repercussions of that, right? You can't use it as a throwaway funny thing because it's not, and it had really terrible, devastating effects. So with that, although I don't necessarily think that, yes, again, this last fight really, I think, brought together a lot of things, I can see, I guess, the culmination idea of this devil war machine, right? This like this context of this thing, the machine that is war, that is conquest, the hellish connotations, like I can see it there. Again, I don't know if, like, I think maybe is kind of, I don't know. Like, the other bosses feel stronger to me. Like, there's a lot of other things that in this content feel stronger to me. But I can see why they've kind of
It's a
leaned into
little
it.
off the edge, but it makes sense for it to be there in the capacity that it is, because we've seen Void Scent and or Dragon batteries used before, and that's what this guy is. He is a battery. But he's a battery that got loose. As we've seen before with Bahamut, when battery creatures get loose, they're not happy. And they try and screw things up. This particular one, the Diablo, which I don't know if it's referred to prior to stuff that comes later, but later than this particular thing. But when I saw Diablo, I was like, man, I really hope that's a Diablos reference. I want this to be a Void thing. And I always felt like they did Diablos dirty when he was just in the dungeon, and then when he shows up later in Mach and everything, I was like, good. So I like to see that particular summon, if you will, come up again and again. But some of his lines are, I return to myself at last, so makes you wonder what that means when the thing is holding him.
Can I read the last one, Zen? Will you let me break down the last one?
Sure. The gates must be opened. The energies of the nether must flow free once more. So, first of all, what do you mean once more? What gates? Are we doing some Tartarus stuff here? Hearken to me, wayward souls of the black. Make known your misery. So he's like, hey, bros, check it out. We got a gate over here. Let's go. And then...
Yeah, this last one I just wanted to note to tie into what we were talking about earlier, because it's such a good example, and it's so amazing, and I love it. And actually, the actors in their readings of these, I don't know if they just had experience or what, but a lot of them actually really do hit these punctuations really specifically. And I don't know what the original Japanese text is either, and how it reflects this or how the translation. So that's all within the context. But earlier, when I was talking about Matsuno's use of various devices, this line covers several. So, like, the first part has alliteration in it. Your frail, feeble flesh belies such sumptuous souls. It's like, oh, it's so good. Frail,
exactly why I put it there.
feeble flesh, sumptuous. It belies, which then turns it into the S here. So belies such sumptuous souls. It's just so
great.
good. Like, I just really, honestly, I think that this writing is gorgeous. Like, and with that, it creates this, it lends this archaic feel, this timeless feel, this poetic feel, right? It creates this feeling of like an ancient entity or something, and gives, I think, the actors as well such great material to work with. So, like, in this kind of alliteration, you would build with it, you know, your frail, feeble flesh, like it does, it has this momentum to the line that's so good. And then you get a second half of it, which is that anytime, particularly like in Shakespearean performance, that you get single single syllable words. They are meant to be very distinctive punctuation. So like a sentence that is just, I must have them. They are like, it has a weight to it that's meant to be leaned into, and oftentimes will like round out a particular statement. It'll end a statement, right? Because that is
come
your
down is what I thought of. In
yes,
Macbeth,
let it come down. Like
when
you're
the
meant
murderer,
to
yeah.
Yes, it's so thank you, Aldianaux. It's one of these things where it's, while maybe not lore, like something that is a lore specific thing here, right?
Mhm.
It, in many other ways, I think contributes to the larger picture of how he works and or the details he pays attention to, but also it gives emotional beats to these characters that are just really interesting to kind of dig into. Like, I must have them. I must have them all. Like, if you kind of even go through some of those lines, or the, oh, what is it? 7 shadows cast, 7.
Oh, yeah.
Even that one from the previous. Listen the next time you go through some of those fights, because for a personal plea for myself, like, there are moments where, oh my gosh, it just hits you with the impetus through the writing alone and the performance of those lines. And I think it's something that shines about this content that should be highlighted, honestly.
Yeah.
So, after we semi-defeat the Diablo armament, we're trying to detain Lion and Menenius, and we're interrupted by Diablo being like, I ain't dead, what's wrong with you? And he continues to berserk and freak out and bust up the Dalriada, which pretty much seals Lion and Menenius' fate. I like your note here. Lion is targeted by it, but Menenius jumps in the way, a la Piccolo from DBZ.
I mean, it was the same pose almost.
Yeah.
Before we
backwards.
close,
Yeah.
before we close on Diablo armament, I wanted to address one of the questions in the chat.
Sure.
Which is Diabolos actually in there? Which is a question I don't know. I want to say no, because there's like, well, actually, I don't want to. My gut says no, because there's two things in combination working together: is the way they described the workings of the Nullstone, and the way the note says it was designed to serve as a vessel without confirming that it is currently a vessel serving for. So like those two things in combination, I just feel like they would have highlighted better if Diabolos was still out there and confirmed to be in this. But I don't like that answer very much. Like I said, I don't want to give that answer, because one of the questions on my like long-term ongoing, will I ever get another interview list, is to describe a little bit more about how the Nullstone works, because I think Diabolos is a great recurring enemy, and to fight him one more time at level 99 would be aces. So I want the Nullstone to be something that obliterates only the vessel, that the essence of a void scent cannot be destroyed by any means we know of unless it is consumed by another void scent, because that just gives us so much to play with.
It's a little Ascian-esque there, eh?
The idea that one day I could look back on this as an intended all along foreshadow that Diabolos was alive because for a moment he was pulled into this machine, that would be great. I want it so bad. At the moment, I cannot condone saying that it is confirmed one way or the other, or strongly suspecting that he is in there.
But it's cool.
But it's cool.
It's really cool. So it's
really cool.
Flies up in the sky and is freaking out and is basically going to blow everything up. Like, this is a situation of, oh no, we actually can't do anything about this. And then...
It's very Cartano-esque.
Yes. Misia and Queen Gunhilder, wielding Save the Queen, together charge the armament, destroying it, and gravely injure herself in the process. I guess just Misia. Yes, that is who is injured. Save the Queen endures and falls back down onto the battlefield. For approximately a month, I've been holding on to this joke, and I finally get to tell it, and I'm sorry in advance. But this is a Deus Ex Machina. This is what this is.
Sen.
There's two of them, and they just show up and fix everything. That's what just happened.
Sen, it's good. It's good. It hurts, but it's good.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's what I wanted.
I like it.
Moose is just like, I hate it. It's not good.
I wanted more from this. Like, you know,
No,
they just show
Pook,
up
don't
and they
leave.
go,
Rook's like, whoa, just got here. Bye. Terrible
later.
puns today.
Is this what we're doing? I'm out.
Uh,
Yeah,
But-
I never, ever, never, never, ever, never, ever, never like a Deus Ex Machina. I don't like it. On one hand, again, we have this moment that's like maybe I sort of redeemed myself. And in particular, I guess in connotation with the fact that like she had to realize that her people, if she's going to be the queen, right? Her people encompass both. They encompass both the forces of this empire that have kind of existed there and been there, and also the resistance that she herself felt, you know, like wronged by. Like, and so she realizes that I think the true spirit of magnanimity and royalty within her is that you have to realize that oftentimes you are trying to reconcile people who may not be the best, and you're trying to lead them in a better direction, right? Like, I think she kind of gets there, but the way it happens does not feel as though that's really what's supported, and it does feel very much like, oh, you did all this, and then I'm here, and it's done, bye. Like, cool. It's like I just nailed it, which is not fun.
Yeah, you know, there's the after stuff kind of helps it, but I don't know. As soon as she disappeared, I was just waiting for the return right when we needed it, you know.
yeah, I don't know. I didn't hate it, but it felt kind of weird and unsatisfying.
It was Chekhov's sword for like however long it takes you to get from that scene to the end.
Yeah.
Moose, you're so quiet.
I know.
What are your feelings? What are your thoughts?
About which part in particular?
Everything.
I am
Her showing up.
currently just her showing up.
Sure, yes.
Sure.
For
Okay.
now, unless you have more.
I think the timing was conspicuous. I think the timing was very, like, much like the volley of fire from the airships at the beginning, just a narrative contrivance that was just not scored into the surface of the story as well as it could be. But at the same time, nothing feels terribly wrong about it, because I think Messia's story was kind of a middle ground between these two sides that we were told about this whole time. And it highlights being able to see things from multiple perspectives. Especially, I think you kind of have to read her field notes kind of closely to get all of it, but it's a little like Fordola in this idea of taking the path that you believe to be right. And the decisions that you're making, you become blind to being as bad as they are when you think they're serving the right ends. Like, there are some characters, I think Nier again highlighted this really well. There are some characters that just, you don't have to be crazy or evil to commit atrocities if you think you're right, if you're that convinced you're right. And if you go through her field notes, I think this ending makes sense in a way, not as redemption, but as consistency with kind of following what she thought was the best thing to do in the moment. So this is kind of like the face turn of her character in a way, but not in a way I think redeems her, just makes sense of her her loyalties and her commitment. But I do
like to
think
No,
the
go ahead.
timing of it interrupts the ability to process that fully.
I like to think that, and this is BS. I'm just gonna say, I like to think that the queen, the actual queen, has been watching this whole time, and just sort of went, okay, so if that Diablos armament gets out, that's going to be bad, but also we'll get rid of that thing that this legion has, and then I know I can take it out, no big deal, and that'll bolster the people who are my people from long ago. So I'm just gonna show up at the right time and take care of that, and everybody who I want to win is gonna be just fine. So give her timing a little less contrived plotline. It just has to happen now. Feeling.
Yeah.
To go into the theme of primals, right? They answer your prayers. what the whole resistance group was praying for salvation. What showed up? Salvation.
The excuse I tell myself is that supernatural beings may not experience time exactly the same way we do, and they might have a little more warning than we do, and might have a little more opportunity to manifest than we do. And that, you know, for us, it might be like a split second Deus Ex Machina thing, but for them, they, you know, that they see the determinism coming Makoto Echo style, and they're just like, then that's the point, I'm going to intervene. Like, yep. So I
Sounds good.
try to
Like
find
that better.
excuses for it, but
These are all good
Yeah.
theories. I actually, Aldianaux, I also like that idea of the prayer. I hadn't really thought about that. Or, yeah, even just like the prayers of her people throughout all time. Like the idea that she is this embodiment for them. And I do also like the idea that supernatural entities just aren't beholden to a lot of the same rules. And I mean, they can just do stuff we
Yeah.
can't.
To me, this scene was just like a parallel of Cartno, everyone praying for salvation, it appearing, but it went well this time.
It worked. I like that.
It worked this time.
So ultimately, Misija was pretty screwed up, and she says she refuses treatment. She doesn't want to be healed. And Jazzlebean gives you that same choice he gave you earlier. Are we gonna take care of her? Are we gonna kill her off? How do you want to handle this, bro? And you base my assumption, we've talked about this before,
Yeah.
based on the choice you previously made and the choice you make now, you get a bunch of different outcomes. Most people that I talked to got where you're like, I'm gonna kill her, and then Jazzlebean's like, no, I can't let you do that, and he ends her. My choice, when I said I'll take care of her, he doesn't stop me. He didn't try to stop me. So when I went to go kill her, she was already dead. So in both cases, you're not the one who kills her. But
it's
based
just a little
on,
bit of window dressing,
yeah,
a little bit of framing.
kinda
Helps you
cool.
maintain consistency with how you want the story to be for how you play. Like I think a lot of people had criticisms for that this didn't make a huge impact on the story, but I think it preserves your ability to perceive your character in the story the way you want to. That's what counted for me. I don't think it was much more of a narrative choice as much as a personal choice. I actually went the other way with it, where as we went through the story, I was realizing like, wow, I'd love to stab her for my own benefit. And it'd be great. It'd be great if she were attacking me and I was defending myself and I could, feel good about that. But in the position that we were in, that's not how it was at all. So I refused to go forward with it as my character because it's not my character's job to make political decisions for other countries. And this is a very political decision. It's a historical decision. That's a Boja decision. That is not a Moose decision. So like, as much as I personally would have loved kind of the, wow, she has really like screwed with my life these last few months. I would love to do that. I can't do it in that scenario. So I actually went the other way with it.
I did the same, but for like, if you went for the larger picture issues like politics, I went much more for like the personal kind of thing, because the character that I play on, that's like my main character, right? Is also a role-playing character. And so for her, like, I usually tend to look at a lot of these situations in a more complex light because actually a lot of the Dabog lore that we got from this really closely echoed some of the stuff that I had already kind of come up with for her, and like some of the things that had happened to her, and like, her history and being modified by the Empire and things like that. And I loved it. I was like, this is perfect. Now I'm vindicated in all of my ideas. So that's why this is the best content in all of Final Fantasy XIV. But also personally, I could see in her an echo of the things that my own character kind of reflected, right? A morally complex character making decisions based off of what they think to some degree is right or have been told. And I also don't want to kill any more female Rugadins in this game. I want them to live and thrive. But it had to do with that more personal thing, right? Like, who am I to judge when I can't even truly judge myself, right? So for that, I was like, no, I will not kill her. And whatever else she faces is of her own volition, or the, what she's brought about because of the things she's done in this nation. But yeah, I just didn't feel like my character would think that they had the right to judge when they themselves had, contributed to this in any sort of way, shape, or form, or like the Garlean Empire machine, which I thought was, I don't know, it's interesting to see how people make these decisions.
Yeah. And, there's the layer on top of that because, and we'll talk about it at the end, this is a frame story. Is that what's written? What was written, right? What actually was written from there? Regardless of your choice, what was actually written? And we get into, and Fusion, you may still be in the chat, the whole my vision of it versus yours, what is the canon, and it doesn't matter in this case, which is nice. It does ceremonially, politically. Moose, I was the same, like, in my headcanon of my character, he's like, absolutely not. This is not my choice. You do what you will. I'll help you. That's what I'm here for. But that's up to you. If you're going to be a leader, you have to do it. But I really think that this gives everyone this kind of idea, like, okay, maybe I do have to think about what my character would do. Some people are really used to that. Some people aren't. And to put that in front of you, I think it's just a great idea in general to have these conversations.
This is going to be my go-to example in the future of a mechanically, narratively pointless choice that exists for good reason. That it's not just a moment for you to, like, hit a button so you feel like you're still playing a game and involved in the story, which some do feel like sometimes. But this one, I think, was more of just helping you frame the story the way you want to frame it in your own mind for your own character. And sometimes those mechanically pointless choices add a lot to the experience in a way that some people don't give them credit for.
Right.
I think, to go back to my choice, I definitely went the RP route, which I actually don't normally do when I make character game choices. Normally I do them for myself, and I usually pick the nice things, but my character is actually supposed to be sort of ruthless, so I did pick let's murder this bitch. I'm tired of her. But I think my initial choice was no, she needs to go on trial, and I like that in that case with those two things where the character changes its mind. The secondary character sort of doesn't take that choice from you. Like, they could have, in the case of everybody else, they could have stuck with the one where he's like, no, I'll do it. It's like, no, I mean, you've made this choice. You had this nice thought earlier, but you're mean now. I guess go ahead. I think that's really, it's kind of interesting where they don't try and take that character development away from you, if you will. So I think it's interesting the way they line things up. Do we have anything else on that choice we want to talk about? I know we talked about it before, pretty in depth.
No.
So basically, the wrap up here is you go back to Gongos and there's a party. As you might imagine, people are very excited. I think Jazzlebean, whatever his name is, says he's going to take care of Masia's burial, which is not party material, but yeah, you go back, there's a party, and they're already starting to put together a new government, and in these papers you see they're actually using some Garlean stuff. They're using Garlean ideas to put together their new government. So while they were trying to get out from under that rule, it's interesting that they also understand that some of those ideals could actually be useful. And or you can come at it from the other perspective where, what are you doing? Why would you do this to yourselves? Have you been more brainwashed than you think? I think it's a very interesting point that there are many views on at this point, probably.
Go ahead. Good.
Oh, I was just going to say that, you don't, I mean, a lot of games don't go into this detail. Like, they had to here because it's a continuation of the theme of this integration, this merging of the cultures. But a lot of games wouldn't be like, yeah, well, they're creating a new government and this is what they're going to do, right? Because it's such whatever, it's not a game thing. But just talking about it in general and seeing the pushback, and it just really brings home all of the themes of Baja so far. In seeing, okay, I'm gonna learn from my mistakes, and then the people are like, no, those are mistakes too,
I chose to see this as social commentary, just because it reflected so much of kind of what I see as an American, is this idea that, like, even when you have political rivals, political enemies even, to throw out the baby with the bathwater of we can't embrace good ideas because of who had them, that's a problem. So that when we look at the way Garlean rule worked, in if we look at the core provinces, the ones where there is no rebellion, people are happy to be in the empire. They've been in it forever, as far as we know. The network might change that. That there are good principles in there sometimes. There's effective rule in there. It's not just all atrocity, all oppression all the time. There's leadership in there somewhere. So, not only is it, functional to a degree, there are some good ideas in there, but it's also what the people know. So I just appreciated that nod to you don't have to throw out good ideas because you don't like who had them. And I feel like that's something a lot of embrace in the world today. And I don't know, that's just to see it as social commentary.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's also an
That's well
interesting
said.
glimpse into the future possibilities of what happens after the Empire's reach is kind of gone, Because there are these places that have been ruled in a specific way, or like you said, these ideas that may have originally been core concepts or a part of the actual structures that whether they're already in place in those nations or they are not bad ideas in and of themselves. And even with the Fourth Legion, right? So a lot of the Fourth Legion's policies have adapted. They've been changed. We've seen that the Fourth Legion in and of itself is kind of unique. And so they themselves have already started this process of claiming what they want to claim and tossing what they don't and creating something that will work better for the future of their people as a whole with the perspective of what's happened or been done to them or what they've been a part of in this regime, right? It's complex, but at the same time,
Right.
I think that having them do this does kind of set the tone for how things may even change in those other places as this rule starts to go. And we see, bits and pieces of that as well with Verlaten. And every nation will probably have their own way that they respond to this, whether it is going completely opposite and being no, we reclaim ourselves for ourselves, or it's something like this where they're going, we have to envision an actual purposeful future that exists within the confines of what's currently happening in our country. And how do we do that in a way that, lifts us up and lets us move forward? It's cool.
I don't want to go off the rails because we're so close to the end
Yep.
here. But just hearing this draws an immediate parallel in my mind, because this is a crusade that I'm on, to the Ascians now that the Unsundered are gone. Because yeah, they were under this regime. They were made to do this. Now what? Do you follow what they were doing? Do you go crazy like Van Daniel? Do you try and make something new? Are they all gone? I don't know, and I really want to know.
We need a couple more answers than we have.
Yeah.
I think I can suspect,
Sure.
based on the level and speed with which Square Enix was throwing Ascians under the bus for most of 4.0.
Right.
It was just side story, Ascian died there. Ascian already died here. 2 Ascians died there. So just the speed they were trying to get rid of them for a couple weeks tells me that they don't have a lot of grand plans to respect for them, but that's at the time. So 5.0, Emmett tells us that all the summoners of Zodiac are tempered. And I feel like this is a debate every time I bring it up, but my experience of them so far is that holds true when they're restored to their office. That you don't just get to loophole yourself out with some kind of, death, bodily death experience, because we've seen that work with living people before. But if you remember who you are, your identity, and that identity was tempered, you're still tempered, is what I'm getting the impression of so far, because of what we saw in Eden with Gaia. As soon as she started to remember who Gaia was, it started coming back. You got the glyph, you got the seething darkness. There's a deleted line where she screams in Lord Zodiarc's name. So because of all of that, I think they might all still be tempered. So they might just have wildly different ideas of what makes Zodiarc happy and no chill at all.
Right.
Because I think back to Nabriales. Nabriales was under orders from La Habrea to do a thing for Zodiarc, but the instant he saw a way I really hate that La Habrea is going to look good for this. I'm going to steal Tup Samadhi and then I'll sit at Zodiarc's right hand. That was his whole thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if they all have that. So when you say what now, my only question is, do they agree? Do Van Daniel and the others agree on what would make Zodiarc happy, or are they all crazy?
And we've seen something kind of that I think maybe reinforces this. with Tiamat. The idea that like there may be incredibly powerful entities that are tempered and may within that have, again, their own agency to some degree. Like, but that perhaps because of, yes, their own power or longevity or will or whatever it is, are able to hold their own to some degree or be kind of immune to these presences like we see with the Echo. But like, specifically in this case of being tempered, it doesn't always mean that you become like a mindless zombie that's just sort of like being beckoned around. So I could definitely see something like that with them. I think it would make sense, and I think they've even recently reinforced that kind of concept with Tiamat. So
yeah, I just bring it up because of the parallel.
Even with Gaia, she comes back around.
Yeah.
So going back to the plot, we learned that our buddy Lilia is totally fine. Well, she's recovering, not totally fine. There's a cute little exchange where Sid threatens to bring in Jessie to yell at her for overexerting herself. And then Fran shows up. Will this be the last time we see Fran? But basically she says, hey, didn't expect much of you. Thanks for showing up and doing all of this stuff. But Gibranth is still out there, and I got to take care of that for forever. So she may call on us for our help again in Dalmasca, which is why so many people, well, amongst other things, were like, there's going to be more to this, right? There's going to be more to this, right? There's going to be more to this, right?
No. Apparently no.
Apparently not.
As far as we know now. But I mean, could they take these and do something with them later? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's all still there, and just because Matsuno won't have his hands on it doesn't mean it won't go somewhere. Will it be as good? Well, I guess we'll see. We go back to Mikoto, and she is checking out the Save the Queen sword. And apparently the Queen's presence is gone from the sword. She is no longer an Odin. What do they do with that sword?
They just kind of keep it in
let
there.
you put it in your house.
They turn into a housing item is what I was going to say.
I was kind of like, every time there's something important and we just like throw it in a canyon, it comes back. So
You might as well let me put it in my basement like Lara Croft. I'll keep it safe.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. And then we see the narrator we've been watching is none other than Jazzlebean in his book Chronicles of the Boshin Revolution. Marsek's been...
move.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, that's a move we've had across...
all the time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Across the
Sword, I think,
expansions.
started it here.
Yeah.
Which I like. I think it's neat. It does make me wonder if it opens them up to, future merch possibilities down the road.
Just
we
as,
actually
like,
get
notebooks?
the chronicles, or as notebooks. Yeah.
Be cool.
It also, I'm gonna hate saying this, but if the storylines that we're playing are just somebody's chronicle, like how much of what we're learning is actually canon to the real, quote unquote, real world? Are the stories that we're playing just like the lore books?
They've taken away our agency. We are the biased experience, or we are someone else's biased experience of ourselves. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
No.
Right? Sorry.
I'm over here thinking about more freaking time shenanigans. Like if these are all someone else's memoirs, then hasn't this already happened? But if this already happened, then how did we change what happened mid-memoir? So really, this didn't happen, and the solution is that there was never an 8th Umbral era, and these are all grandfather paradox memories because,
in the time library, we're sitting for like 10 years plus in a time library reading things that never happened.
2 years from now, Graho goes back in the tower with his false memories. He wakes up 200 years from now back into the that side story ruined everything.
Or lose it if at the very end of this, the end of Endwalker, right? They cut to something, and like Zen, like you were saying, it's like your character sitting there at a table reading the book, and you realize that the whole time you've been the narrator, or I don't know, Heidelin's voice is somehow your own or something.
You are Heidelin!
You shut the book and you look into the camera and you go, that's not how it happened at all. And then it's like Endwalker credits roll.
80 cent theme.
Look. That is now, you know what? The ending where we become a god and everything goes even like higher stakes, even crazier. I want to avoid that so bad. I'll take that. That's my second worst case scenario now.
Yipes.
I'll take it.
All right. let's see. There's an epilogue. Did I skip anything? Nah, not really.
Nah.
There's an epilogue where we go to Valnain in Dalmasca and see Lion being debriefed by Gabranth. Grandpa Lion did not die. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. I really like that jovial / grumpy old man. I don't know what's up with that.
He's like
Anyway.
the consummate mercenary. I just like him.
Yeah, I mean, I also just like his weird fashion. Like, the headband
sure.
and stuff, it gets me. I mean, like, I know it's a little bit of, like, a throwback hairstyle-wise, but, like, I don't know, he feels like that weird guy that shows up to every meeting in, like, a Hawaiian shirt and, you know, like, cargo shorts, and everybody else is, like, there doing really important business stuff, but he knows he's so vital to the company that nobody would dare speak out against him.
Puts
so, like,
his sock
sometimes he
sandal
just
feet
shows
on the
up.
table, like whatever.
Yeah, he puts
do
his,
something
like,
about
sock
it.
sandal feet up on the table. That's the energy I get from this man.
I like it.
Yeah. All right. He takes offense at Gabranth's reaction to the news of Menenius' demise. Like, don't you care? What the heck? Don't you care? Goku, why don't you care that Gohan is dead? Gabranth sends the nearby soldiers away and asks Lion, what would you have me do then? In their conversation, Gabranth commends Menenius for his strength, but remarks that my time is short. So he's like, I mean, he did a good job, but I got shit to do. It's very, not a very nice man. Which, is that consistent with other Gabranth? I haven't played Tactics. Or 12 or anything.
Well, yeah, I mean...
Gabranth is 12.
Okay.
Gabranth is a tough one in 12 because he has a vision and he's loyal to it, but he also does a lot of questionable shit along the way that makes you, like, the conversations that he has when no one else is around show that in spite of kind of goals that you might understand and agree with, he's not always, you know, putting on a facade over that and is a great guy either. He's just a very complex character. Like, the way he talks to Bosch is just not totally on par with what you'd assume about him if you only knew his true motivations. So he's a complex guy.
Okay. So Gabranth starts to send Lion to jail because he messed up. When Sicinius, who we were talking about earlier, going, who is that again? He shows up and tells Gabranth that they've recovered more relics. And then they both kind of look to an axe and a greatsword, which are theoretically more of the weapons. Which was a big question of mine. Like, why do we only have this one sword? Aren't there, you know, like one for every job?
The part of it that frustrated me so much is the choice of the weapons.
Yeah.
Because if you take away that one scene, it's very easy to assume that what happens is Gabranth sends Lion to jail for a little bit. Lion stews about everything that he experienced in this entire thing. He sees how expendable Menenius was in spite of his loyalty, and that he just decides, you know what, you know, we all followed you to build this new nation. Everything collapsed. We didn't get anything out of it, and that's why in the field note he goes back and kills Gabranth later, and it all makes sense. But this scene where they show up and Gabranth is just like, hey, you're gonna have to go to jail for a little bit. That good? Whatever. So, like, that sounds like they both know they're gonna see each other again, and these people show up delivering what two weapons? Gabranth's weapon of choice and Lion's weapon of choice. And that just sounds like they're gonna meet back up because they have a plan later. And the fact that I cannot read that Death of Gabranth note and think he's dead. He's fine. He's fine. That all says to me, third arc. And there's a whole bunch more of this that I could talk about, but we're on this one scene right now, so let's finish that scene.
Yeah, that's it.
I mean, it's absolutely the setup for the next thing, right? It's like, if you're gonna have a next part, you don't usually, sometimes they'll end a season and it's like, everything's all wrapped up. Yay, we did it. Excellent. Don't look forward to the next one, but maybe like that's the ending of a series, right? But if you are setting something up, you every time in any medium, movie, anything, you have that little cliffhanger. You have the and then ... You have the little moment, the stinger that says, this is the beginning of the next thing. This was not written as an ending. Like, this was written...
That happens in shows too, where they're like, here's the next one, and then the show gets canceled. And for me, reading some of Matsuno's tweets makes me feel like his next season got canceled.
Sure.
I would like to see it return in a different form.
Sure.
Like the first one was a 24-man raid series. The second one was a relic arc. The third one could be anything. Yeah. But if they could convince him not to leave 50 plot hooks laying around and give us closure, I'd love to see a third one. Like if a third one's just going to make us feel this way about the fourth one, then fine. Second one, whatever. But like I do want the closure really bad now.
So they're making the 9 anime. What if this is just an anime later?
An anime setup?
Yeah.
I mean, I would take it over nothing.
Yeah.
But do I think that it would be... I feel like it'd be weird. Yeah.
It would be very strange to be like, if you want to know what's happening in this anime, go play this video game.
Yeah.
I want to be realistic because when we ended the 24-man raid series, like the collab was over, we were like, what? Like Fran just got here. Like we never saw any of this stuff. Like, you know, so when we're seeing this in Bozja, it feels like a natural continuation of that, even though it probably wasn't. So like, when am I good to go into what I foresaw coming? Do we have any else left in our?
Nope, that's
just do it up. Do it up. Okay. So where this ended, Fran coming back here felt to me like them gluing that all those leftovers of A onto the ending of B for C. What I saw was all of these pieces fit together into one cohesive narrative, which is Ash is back. They revealed that she's like somehow the actual Ash in stasis somehow. Like that's one thing I want an explanation for. It becomes kind of a broken vase. We've seen stasis before. How'd they do it? But Ash comes back, reclaims her throne, rebuilds Dalmasca. You've now got the Rabanaster side of Dalmasca under control of Ash. She's able to consolidate the throne. You've got Fran on her side. Lente's Tears brings all the factions together under Ash, because Ash is back. So you've got Rabanaster leading the major Dalmascan forces. You have Gabranth abandoning the 4th Legion as far as the Empire is concerned. Garlemald is falling. They went rogue. They lost. So he's got to shed everything that's not loyal to him and his new nation. He lets them get stomped by Ash. They take back Valnain and Leamond, restore Dalmasca into one cohesive whole, just in time for all of Gabranth and Lion's forces to come back with Tartarus or whatever they dug up this time, and cause more trouble for them for that one final battle to determine who's going to control the ruins of Rabanaster and where Ivalice once was. And then you have a 1st, 2nd, and 3rd act of Ivalice in Final Fantasy XIV. Everything's wrapped up with a tidy little bow. They lose. That's it. They come back to build their new nation and they lose. And how are we not getting it? How are we not getting it?
I have a bad joke.
Go ahead.
So, next expansion, everything's on fire.
Yeah.
What comes from fire, friends? Ash.
Oh, Zen! 2-in-1 podcast?
That's why I thought there was like the note refers to a 6-month gap, even though this world has no sense of time in it. And I really thought that what was going to happen is those 6 months are Endwalker, and that at the end of Endwalker, we're going to catch back up with Ash, having consolidated her power, having consolidated Lente's Tears, having taken back the throne, and starting her march on Valnain and Leamond. I thought it was so obvious. And then we get Gabranth coming from Landis and just, I'm never going to get it now.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like it should be, right? Go ahead, Zen. Go ahead.
I'm just looking back at the tweets. It says the side story is over. Sure.
Save the Queen is over.
Maybe it's something else. You know, Save the Queen is over. Different side story time. Unfortunately, that plan has disappeared. That doesn't mean there's not another plan. And then what else did he say? The story was completed because, the story is completed. So what? New story, same characters.
I hope, because there's also the entire thing that, like, they've kind of tried to do something here in the game where we generally see sort of the homeland, at least in a brief passing, of these different races that are in the game. So, I mean, the fact that it took way longer than I think it probably should have, although within the context of Stormblood it works, but like the Azim Steppe and stuff like that, right? The Aura they just were kind of there as refugees for a while, and then way down the way we got their actual kind of homeland and a sneak peek into it with the map. And of course it doesn't encompass everything, but the fact that we have the Viera, that we have the Hrothgar, that we know now that they're going to be getting the opposite genders, it seems to me at some point you would, for players who play them, probably want to showcase something about their culture and people.
Yes.
So, like, there's that in that same region that I think would make sense. And I also just, like, I hope, like, of course, to me, I think Matsuno is a part of this world in a way that I'm sure others could emulate. And I'm sure that if we continue to tell the stories, and I'm sure there are probably many reasons behind the scenes why they would have, you know, had a departure for him from this, or he may have. And
Maybe he's just got other. Like,
I mean, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe
scenario.
it's maybe it's going into main scenario territory when we go back to it, and we have other people who work on that. So
Yeah.
he's like,
So, like,
let me not step on any toes right now.
There's a lot of possibilities, and I hope they don't just like abandon that corner of the world, because yeah, we got so much in there that needs to be addressed, I think. And
if
it's
you want
not
to abandon
like
it, abandon it after closure.
yes, after closure.
If I can foresee this story, there's a lot to do there. Like what I can foresee is so specific, and I feel like anybody could kind of follow that plan. But at the same time, that's all I want. I want to see Ashe reclaim her throne, and I want to see someone win Dalmasca. That's it. I want to see you could have a great story about kind of Ashe and Gabranth and what it means to fight for your home, what it means to have different ideas of liberation from an empire, and then bring Ivalice back into it somehow. Have your other 4 Espers. We all go home happy. Like.
We can only hope and dream. I hope.
Does that comprise all of your hopes and dreams there?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Do we want to get into field notes?
Yes.
These are long, so we are not going to read them out. Theoretically, you guys are familiar enough with them to sum up pretty good.
You can also read all of them on Gamerscape. I think if you just go Gamerscape Wiki field records.
Actually, we have a really nice field record page, actually.
It's amazing.
Like, shout out to who made that. I mean, it's as easy to navigate as it is in the game.
It is awesome. It really is. You know, I got stuck in there. Like, I only put 2 in the outline because we were like, we're just going to put 2 in the outline because they're so long. But I ended up reading, I don't know how many. I don't even want to say, honestly.
Looks like Ahu and Icarus did a lot of it. Looks really good.
Really good.
Nice. So the first one we have is Noah Van Gabranth.
Yeah.
I don't want to go ahead.
Hold on. I'm so sorry. Really fast, before we get off this topic, I want to address a question that I saw in chat really quick, because if this is something that's going around in the public rhetoric of the game, I just want to take a second. And I love Ivory, and I know Ivory, so I know you're probably just like passing this on as a community discussion thing. We don't think that Matsuno leaving is because he left because of male Viera breaking the lore. And I don't know if this is a joke or not, but I'm going to address it like it's very serious. No. And I think that anybody who says that Matsuno left because of this is because they themselves, for whatever reason, are on a high horse about male Viera being introduced into this game and are trying to find a way to justify that. We've had Matsuno explicitly state recently in an interview some of his own Viera lore and stuff. And he talked about male Viera existing. He talked about concepts of gender within the Viera, which was really fascinating. If you haven't read that yet, definitely do. And that male Viera were something he's always encompassed within the world of the game. And there's many reasons that they like weren't there. And, you know, he has a whole rich world of how he perceives this kind of gender thing within the Viera existing. And he, in the tweets that we've seen, most specifically made reference to the fact that it seems as though the Japanese community did not receive this content well, that it was very mixed, and that like the only specific thing that he has said is that it's been interesting to him seeing how the Western community responded to it, because the Japanese community really did not seem to resonate with it, which may or may not have led to this. But there are no mentions about him leaving because he's like, how very dare you put male Viera in this game.
Darth Zillion in chat is saying that Matsuno did tweet that the way that they designed male Viera for 14 weren't really what he'd envisioned, but that he was still impressed with it. So theoretically, that means that It's fine. He's cool with it.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother him enough to leave.
I mean,
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Yeah.
I think he said he was even planning on fantasiaing to one. So I think that's like a fair
Yeah.
statement to make, because like it's not it's not based on my concept art. Like it's not based on what I was thinking of when we made 12. They did their own thing with it, but I still like it. The thing is that I have a suspicion based on what I've heard Yoshida say in the past. Yoshida has gushed about this guy in the past. They're all huge Matsuno fans.
Yep.
There are former members of 12 on the team. There are people who respect his work going back to Tactics Ogre. And I just really, like, I joked around with Yoshida once at the interview that they sent me to for Gamer Escape. And I was like, hey, you kept saying, like, Hydaelyn was isolated. Now we have Evilise? Like, are you really, like, bridging these two worlds? And he joked, well, Matsuno-san's a god, and if God says they're connected, they're connected. So, like, if Yoshida would do that for him, I refuse to believe that he would have ever okayed any version of Malvira that he didn't approve of. I have a feeling that at every step of the way, he was just like, hey, here's kind of what we're thinking. Do you hate this? Yeah. Does this sully your creations in any way? Like, that's, I can't imagine he didn't okay it with him.
Yeah, I remember him saying that Matsuno was one of his inspirations to be in the industry at all. And there's no way. There's no way that they would run afoul of him in that way. I don't see it. I really don't see it. I can see that there's conspiracies, and I really wish that they would tell us, but they don't have to, right? They just don't.
I think it's just part of the culture that you don't talk about the internal politics of why things happen and don't happen. Yeah. We had that happen with everybody trying to throw Koji under the bus for the Darnus debacle.
Yeah.
Where no one knew what was going on with Darnus's backstory and the genders and what was going on there. We know that it had something to do with kind of poor communication and multiple visions and no real anything being set in stone, and there never really being an iron fist about it. But they were never going to be like, yeah, it's this person's fault, under the bus. Like, you just don't talk about that kind of stuff.
And what we ended up with is an interesting story, so who cares?
Yeah. Darnus is one of the coolest characters now because of that crap. You can clean up anything with a little work.
Yeah.
I just wanted to address that really fast because it was one of those comments where I was like, oh no, if this is the thing that the community is thinking, like, I truly don't believe, you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, I think there's much more, there's bigger stuff. But onwards to the entries, onwards to our field notes, or field records.
If it's all right with you, I'm gonna hand these over to either Charles or Moose, and you guys can sum them up.
What am I doing? I see there's two
pull
notes.
out the bits that make you go, ah, yes, this field note is.
Let's talk about Gabrant's death and how it was not gonna happen, and now I don't know what it's gonna be.
All right.
Sure. So I'll just go through it real quick. So it talks about his background. It talks about he was charismatic and all of this sort of stuff. And it goes through a story about how Beast King Lion, taking extreme umbrage at being held responsible for the defeat of the 4th Legion, plotted mutiny and then succeeded, supposedly. But they never found the body of Gabranth. And even because of that, there's even more kind of legacy behind people thinking they've seen him, this sort of thing. So what were your notes on that?
I think the word extreme umbrage, that term, is the giveaway for me that the rest of this is the biased notes of whoever was writing for the Bojin Resistance. Because we saw a cutscene that the Bojin Resistance didn't see. We've seen a cutscene that the Warrior of Light was not privileged to. Like, we have information that shows that he was just like, hey, technically this was a failure, so you're going to have to go to jail for a bit. That cool? Yeah, that's cool. Like, that's not extreme umbrage. So like I said, without that scene of the weapons showing up, you could take this for granted and be like, okay, well, maybe he just stewed in jail for a while about what happened to Menenius and the way that went down. Like, we saw their little brotherhood moment at the end there. Maybe he did eventually stew really hard on that. But because of that weapons coming in scene, I'm just like, this is a lie. This is history being written by the victor, and it's a lie. They might not know it's a lie, but it's a lie to the players.
It could even be propaganda from the Legion, like, hey, look,
Yeah.
this is what happened.
Yeah.
Gabranth's totally dead, you guys. Don't worry about us anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
it made me think of. Oh, go ahead.
oh, all I was gonna say is like, maybe this was something where they like had done those cutscenes, and then there was information like, if we truly aren't getting any more of this story, maybe there was information that came out where they, realized like, oh yeah, well this will actually be where it ends, and so the writers really fast putting in these field notes were like, oh, and then he dies. Like, and that was,
That's it.
I mean, it's possible, but I agree in the sense that even in the way that it's written, feels like an open door in some way, shape, or form. Anytime it's like, and somebody died, and you're like, cool, did they see the body for sure? And they're like, no, they fell off a bridge, and you're like, oh, they're not dead then. They're definitely alive, or oh,
There's
they
only
burned
two
up.
ways.
But
There's only two ways to read this, and like for me, like
Sure.
call me wrong, call me biased, whatever, but there are only two ways to read this for me. One, this was going to be the next section of plot, and they didn't have time to do it, so they just threw it in the notes and called it a day. That's one way to take it. Maybe that's how it really ended, and they were just open ideas. And then the other one is, this is a setup. Like, this is just a calculated setup, and maybe the setup goes nowhere. Like, we had a lot of calculated setup at the end of Return to Ivalice and those evolution raids, and those weren't apparently going anywhere either. But
Yeah.
Apparently the
Now
body, quote unquote, the body was found, but it was like severely burned. So when
Yes, exactly.
when you're trying to cover
Yeah,
up somebody's death,
right.
that it's not really their death, you just burn the body. That is
it's like
that
when
is a
someone
trope.
adds the word, it's like when someone adds the word seemingly or ostensibly. He was seemingly killed when, okay, he'll be
Yes.
back.
yeah, it's so funny though, because this like one segment is just so wishy-washy. It's like, oh yeah, Gabranth's body was discovered, and he's burned so bad you couldn't even recognize him. And in part because like nobody's even seen his face, so nobody even knows what he looks like. And you're like, okay. And then, but still, in the end though, it definitely was for sure confirmed. And news
I
of the
love
death.
He did, though.
I love the ups and downs of this note. He
Yeah.
was killed. Oh, but they couldn't tell it was him because the body was burned. Oh, but then they confirmed it was him. Oh, but some people think that's a lie. Oh,
I enjoy the but nobody's not that many people have even seen his face, so it's like, okay, so even if we did find him, we wouldn't know it was him because we don't know what he
Oh my
friggin'
God,
looks
I
like.
took that as yet another Darnus brick joke of how no one ever knew it was Eula. Because like when Gaius came back, one of them, Sid and Nero were also like, well, I didn't see him without his helmet much anyway. Like,
Who can say?
I mean, it's a good point
yeah.
when you wear fancy armor all the time in public. No one knows what you look like underneath it.
Because
So
half the people look like
all
Milkman,
Eula
and you
Darnus
just don't
had to
wanna
worry
see that
about was
guy.
the military doctor.
Yeah, that's it.
She bribed that one.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's Garlemald. There is corruption. But, he mentioned that his time was short, right? And that's a lot of people are sticking to that too. Did he just die of some unknown malady? And then they covered
Sudden
it up?
burning?
Or did Lion actually do it? Yeah, but
What's that called when you just erupt into flame?
spontaneous
Spontaneous
combustion.
There you go.
Spontaneous combustion.
He knew it was coming.
Yeah. Yeah, he could feel it. He was getting a little
No,
warm.
there's probably already a plan in place where he's like, all right, I have to fake my death right here because later on I have to do this, this, and this.
Right.
Well, they could do that. They could just be like, well, Lion put him out of his misery, and this is how history
yeah.
remembers it.
Ugh.
But at
By
the same
burning him?
time, yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like at the same time, that doesn't sound like a great way to do
No.
it. So that, yeah,
No. I don't know.
Suspicious.
Yeah.
It's one of
definitely
those things
suspicious.
where I think they can use it either way. To us and to me, this seems like a very clear setup. This seems like something you would put in there with intentions of, like, paired with everything else, intentions of the next chapter, right? But I think with the way that they have kind of wiffle-waffled this, they could be like, and we never did anything with it again. And if anybody said, like, but what about that? They'd be like, he died. Did you not read the notes? Like,
Yeah.
they can do whatever they want with this. However, I do think the overall culmination and the fact that, like, while these specific notes are big in this content, there's so much that's revealed in them, right? To me, if this is going to be the end, then it needs to be readable in that way. At the end of the cutscenes, at the end of the playable experience, it needs to be readable that way. So to me, this is an open door they've left cracked, and they're like, we can do this if we want, maybe at some point, maybe not, who knows, but there's stuff there. But it doesn't feel, you know, like, with what we know now from Matsuno, I have serious doubts about them continuing it. But if we had had this conversation yesterday, I would have been like, for sure there's a third part coming.
Right.
So
I just don't know how they I'm just imagining the lifetime of the game after Endwalker to never talk about Dalmasca again in the fall of Garlemald. There's no way. There's no way you can just ignore it.
I've had we've had kind of shit post ideas over and over and over again. We had Gaius lives, Gaius lived. We had Elidibus as a snake, Elidibus was a snake. I'm currently stuck on the presence of Silvertear Lake. But like, if we get the answers of Silvertear Lake, we're transitioning directly to Gibranth. Yeah. We're transitioning directly to Gibranth and Lion last tag team match.
Yeah. I can't believe that we won't see it.
It's not over.
I like this discussion you've been having in chat. This little bit of Lion's Gibranth. We'll know when he shows up with an axe and a greatsword in either hand.
In one each hand.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's it. That's what I want from the next story.
Hey, Garlemald can clone people. You know, I was gonna say, Garlemald has fallen, so, you know, maybe you can't get to the technology. But if you ever didn't know who someone was when they died, just clone them. Figure out who they were, right? That's kind of a shortcut.
All you need when it comes to like a fan base is an idea the developers resonate with and enough people saying we want it and we think it's true. Like if those two things happen long enough, you'll get it. So like we just need to keep like saying that. They'll be like, no, it's over. We'll be like, yeah, nice try. It's not over.
Says the man who single-handedly brought back Gaius.
Yeah. We're just keep looking forward to it. Keep asking about it. Keep talking about it. Keep looking forward to it. Just be like really looking forward to the closure of that Evil East story.
Yeah.
Gibranth is actually like a Dread Pirate Roberts. They just hand off the armor. You're the Pirate Roberts now.
Treat it like when The Rock tried to get everyone to call him Dwayne Johnson. Just like no one goes for it. Just nice try, The Rock.
Yeah. Nice try, Matsuno. We know.
I forget who made that joke, but it's been stuck in my head ever since.
I mean, it makes sense in its connotation.
Go ahead.
The only other field note we had here is about the Diablo armament,
really quick,
just because
though.
it was cool and about. Oh, go ahead.
And the end of this one, it does tell us what happens to all the troops. I think 2/3 of them just gave up. They were like, "Hey, we give up." And then the other third fought to be completely murdered. But the 2/3 that did give up, they just never tried. They were like, "Hey, welcome to Dalmasca. Thanks for giving up. Be citizens now." And to be fair, a bunch of them were probably from there to begin with anyway, because that's how Garlemald rolls. Show up, take over, and force people into your armory.
Yeah.
Yep. And then the couple of last paragraphs are like, we actually don't know if Gibranth is dead, even though this field note already said that he totally is. And then they basically call him a boogeyman in the very last snippet.
Yeah. The ghost of Gibranth.
Yeah.
I mean, the last line is even further details regarding which will be filed in a future report. When they say that the people of Dalmasca still live in fear of him. It's like, what do you mean future report?
The disdain in the words future report as you read them. I could hear it. I could feel the like it resonated through my soul like the echo. Like
So go ahead. If you
Diablo armament. You know, I mean, we talked about it a little bit before about is the vessel for Diablo, is he in there, that sort of thing, and it just kind of goes into detail about why they made it. You know, they're just making vessels. You know, the better the vessel for a void scent, the more power they will have. Makes sense, right? And it kind of just goes into some detail, which I love. I love this lore about the Allagans in general. But it's like, it just means that there's a lot more of them. Stay tuned, right? That's what it seems like to me. What about you guys? As you
Void
saw
batteries everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, there have to be. Where they are, though, is...
We already beat like several Lords of the Void between level 50 and level 70. So if they need a way to make them scarier and more powerful, this could be a way to do it.
I do like the details in this, I guess, just from, we'll go for an RP perspective, just because we have a lot of stuff in the game already, in so many quests, job quests, any quests. I mean, the Void has been, like you were saying earlier, and well, like, just something that is used all the time in, like, here's the baddies, they're Void sent again, like, it just keeps coming up, you know? So we've seen through various things, the way they kind of operate, how people may or may not summon them. We've even seen in, like, some of the raids with like Shadow of Mach and all of that, some devices that were used in different civilizations to imprison and trap or turn them into things like batteries, right? So like we have all of that, but it's kind of nice in just this one to hear this discussion about like hosts for Void Sent and like binding them and how binding spells can subjugate them, and then it's harder at higher levels, and like all these different little tiny details. I dig that, and how they kind of talk about creating hosts that are like potent and, you know, like with these weapons for things like primals, you know, they're huge. They're like, they have to be these massive scale things. So it's neat. I just like those details. And if you're somebody that does a lot of Void Sent stuff, or if that's something that you're curious about, there's definitely like nice little concise discussions about it in this.
Void
It's
Sent.
very consistent. From my memory, with previous Void Sent lore, like how things are summoned and what the summoned things are put into and the hierarchy and whatnot.
I like how the only two times we've ever really studied it in depth repeatedly are Diablos and that Gordanian goldsmith who really wanted to like have sex with a succubus and made a whole bunch of... If you have not put this side story together from all of the pieces that they've left throughout the game, please look into this. It's the funniest thing.
Okay.
Have you missed that one, Zen?
Yeah, where do you start? Where do I find this?
Okay. So pretty much half of the Void Sent minions, everything that is from the Void related 24-man raid bosses. There's a note in Goo Ball on the floor where you put it together. There's this Gridanian goldsmith who was just like super into the idea of like, he just thought Void Sent were hot.
I mean, he's not alone, right? Other people are into him.
His diary ends up in the Goo Ball's Forbidden section, I think, because he ended up doing all sorts of weird stuff. So they hanged him for his crimes, and his body is now missing, and new anatomically correct Void Sent minions are showing up places. But like, there's this whole thing where he goes on a spiel about like, how hot would it be if Lady Amandine was a succubus? I want to try to find a woman who looks like Lady Amandine, and I'm going to turn her into a succubus, and then I'm going to have sex with it. And like, instead of that happening, he summons a mind flayer. He's like, no, the tentacles, no. And like, so there are all these pieces of his story all over the game. If you have not found and put this together, please look into it. I'm not crazy. I swear to God.
No, I definitely, some of those things ring true.
Yep. Yeah.
I need like a video.
Yeah.
I'm working in my head just like in an overdrive right now. Like a video where like somebody, or like maybe even me, who knows? I'm a content creator. I have the power, but at what cost? Like, I make an alt of him, and then I go around and I narrate his journal.
Yes.
And I like actually make cutscenes.
Could this be a collaboration between you and Moose? Moose, could you voice him?
I'd
voice
be there.
him? This would be hilarious. We gotta talk more about this. This would be the funniest thing ever. This is the best thing I've learned all year about Final Fantasy XIV. And this man, he is a true reflection of this community's needs and desires.
Really?
And I like, he's the real champion of Eorzea.
Yes. He is a warrior of light.
Did we just figure out the next arc, like Mecha Amandine?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh my god.
If I were going back to the
Father
Void.
of Darkness, this guy Jim who really wanted to get it on with the succubus.
So if
Look,
it's Mecha Amandine, is she
Yeah, we'll
then
get
a
it-
sex bot also? Is that a thing?
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
gonna
it would
happen?
just be like a kind of reflection of where real society's technology is going. We'll combine in the
no.
Diabolo armament stuff into it. We'll make a mechanized void sent vessel. We'll not summon a mind flayer into it this time. I mean, unless
Yeah.
you're into the tentacles. We'll get this together.
We'll workshop it.
Wow.
I love that as I say this, I glance at chat as
Do it,
we've
do it,
stated
do it,
this,
do it,
and
do it.
Fusion says that sounds like something Rook would write. Thanks, Fusion. Thank you. Thanks so much. Weren't you supposed to be melting today? Why are you here?
If he didn't melt before, that burn might get him.
No, this would be amazing, and I do agree. Yes, this is something I'd probably do, and I would never feel like I regretted a moment of it.
It's so funny to me that these are the only two times we ever like all talk all that depth about how void center summoned in the vessels and how they work and stuff like that. It's either just like, oh, this one's shoved into an eyeball. Oh, this one's shoved into this. Or it's an in-depth thing about Diabolos or the guy who's hot for the void.
I mean, I feel like that's the community at large as well. Like, very serious lore, also banging hot stuff.
Oh, let me bring in the trichotomy. So
Okay.
another thing that the community loves is to cry. So when I saw Diablos armament, I was like, man, you know what's still around in the void? All the warriors of light who tried to make it. You know what would suck? Having to fight them in these armaments where they're like, please don't. I tried to save the world. Like, there you go. There's the other part, the tearjerker. Please, I would love to see that. Hurt me more.
Yeah.
Hurt me, dog.
Make me feel emotions. Make me feel all the emotions. Big yipes.
I'm never going to be able to stop thinking about this hot for void sent man.
I just,
Please.
I
I'm
just hope-
literally going to go to sleep thinking about him tonight. I'm going to think about him for the next 4 days. Thank you for this gift, Moose.
Rook and Moose, seriously, if there's anything I can do
it.
to help make that
Do it.
series actually happen, I don't care. I'll do it.
I'll get
We
all the pieces. I'll
need
see how many
to
of the
do
pieces
this.
I can get together, and we'll see what
Please do
you think
that.
of the pieces.
I will voice act anyone
Additional
else in this
voices.
we need. We can
Yes.
make the characters. We can set up these scenes.
Yeah.
Look, Aldianaux, you have all kinds of technical knowledge, and you have that great DM mind. We can
Is he gonna build our mecha Amandine?
build our opportunity. We can do this through a variety of mediums and the power of video editing.
That's
Yeah,
what my degree is in.
Zen, get in
So-
here. We gotta make this a project. I believe in this.
That was it for the armament. Like, I don't even care anymore about the armament. Like, this was
Nothing else
just
matters.
a
Only
vessel
this.
All right,
to
so
get
like,
into. Yeah.
they keep sprinkling precious little void sprinkles. That's not a good word on us. The whole this whole expansion, just in different places. You know, like, oh,
Yeah.
here's some stuff about the Shadow Keeper. Here's some stuff about Diablos. Here's some stuff about Eden maybe fixing the void. And you know what has to be coming. So I'm just happy that there's more void stuff for them being like, you know, we're just building your foundations for that thing that you want later, right? Yes, thank you. Give Yoshi P. Give.
A question for all of you.
Uh-huh.
What was or were your favorite field notes?
Honestly, I
Everything
like
about,
the
Tough call.
I like the Diablo one. I like the the lore there.
That one's good. That one's good.
me, it's everything about the Landis and the Mage Knights and that whole lore. I want so much of that. Like, to me, that's what I feel that we're missing in this city-state kind of idea. Like, of course, the Charlian, who are scholars and they hoard the knowledge. They don't give it out. Where are the high magic, utopian society of Mage Knights who are not actually utopian? I want that. That's my favorite type of fantasy. So as soon as I see those, I will find all of them. Like, I've read every single one of them. Love it.
I
They're
like
good.
several of them for different reasons. I liked a lot of the background and the world building and the explanations. It's really tough because I liked them all for different reasons. I like Messia's kind of dive into her perspective of why she thought she was righteous. Pagaga's got me good. As far as just like the random generals you see on the field, I loved the Landis trio because I really thought it was building up to something. Gilbrabert is that I don't remember how we're calling him, but I love that idea of just like the cult around the Espers and that he was just like super into Auracite. I liked a lot of them for different reasons.
Whenever somebody mentions Auracite, I get nervous because some of the earliest stuff about the 14th and those Void Sent there had to do with people using Auracite and using it wrong and Aether bleeding and.
I think in the end, we're going to learn that Auracite is just a nickname for any sort of crystal that interacts with spiritual ether instead of corporeal ether and uses it as a vessel in a certain way. Because Auracite is also what they called the Heart of Sabik in Japanese.
Okay.
It's jet black Auracite. And so, yeah, that's something else that needs to be cleaned up. I mean, that whole thing needs to be cleaned up because you got a shard of Zodiarch, which is also Auracite, which casts Ultima, but Ultima is this deity thing that makes Auracite, and also we have an Ascian named Ultima. Somebody please make sense of this. I can make sense of it, but it'll be random shit I made up.
Yeah.
Like, I need someone to officially come make sense of this.
I would love to I'd be like, yeah, sure. Like, just how Hades has that other form, Ultima's other form as an Ascian was that wild angel lady with big mouth on the bottom. But it could be so many different things.
From Stu in chat, Auracite is now available in white, black, prismatic, memory, and lemon flavors, as well as Zodiac.
I just the Heart of Sabik, yeah. After we saw the kind of stones of the office, I was like, could it be that those are the memories of? No, it can't be. There is no office of Zodiac. But like, there's so many tantalizing.
I think that's why I think it's a catch-all.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be lots of different types of Auracite by the end, and that the ones that are the Espers that we saw in the Evilise story are just one specific set of them, and that if they wanted to do something with it for the Office Stones, that would be a different subset of them. If they wanted to do something with it for Hydaelyn and Zodiarch, that would be a different subset of them.
I don't like that. Title something so that I know what it is, and it only does one thing, maybe two.
Oh, I already said it myself, but I loved the Dabog lore. I just thought that was so fun. I mean, it's not fun because it's really, really miserable what happened to him, but it's also fun because that was another case where I think little seeds in your mind of like, oh, this could be kind of fun if they did this, kind of manifested, right? The idea of somebody being altered to the point where they could almost, link with these machines and control them with their mind. I was like, I love it. I eat that up. I will take every single bit of it. And then also just like the complexities of his character. Pagaga also really got me though. And the Pagaga fan art is so good. I just want her to come back, if nothing else, at some point as some kind of character, because she's so fun.
I mean, one of the notes, I guess it's the Brandt note, actually does say that like all of the officers just kind of pieced out and we don't know where they are, so she good.
It was fun to see some of the Doman characters as well, or like the characters that are coming over. I was surprised to see them in that zone, and I thought that was neat. That like the trio of Ninja as well, and then some of the other characters. I liked that a lot too.
The first time I saw them, the first time I saw them, I was like, "Why is that a familiar name?" And like 3 more fates where I saw them, it finally clicked, and I was like, "Those are the guys. Those are the traitors. You know them already. That's awesome." So, yeah, that was great. I like that.
I saw it again as like set up for the third arc. Like it means a lot to Hien to be able to consolidate the various Othardian factions together, the Eastern Alliance. And the Eastern Alliance is not the Eastern Alliance without Dalmasca. So I think they all have a vested interest in consolidating the leadership of the Dalmascan resistance and joining the Eastern Alliance, because it's just important to the security of the world in his perspective. So even if it never manifests, I did love seeing that they remembered to include him in that process, supporting that process.
Arsonius in chat says that the Lionfield note actually says Pagaga is with him.
Yeah. Yep.
Specifically. So you'll probably see that crazy little girl again. Is that all we want to talk about? I think we finally got to the end.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
I think I've indulged in all the rants I needed.
Okay.
I think so too, but I would say definitely go to Gamerscape. Go look at those field notes if you haven't gotten all of them. I know it's kind of hard to get some of them. They made it a little bit easier. They are such worth the read. They are so, I mean, even if it's not true, the story that they have set up is still a good one, right?
Yep.
I don't think it's a good conclusion at all, but it's a good story at the very least.
Agreed. And
It's
I
not
think
the ending, but it is an ending.
I think overall, agreed. Like it's there are a lot of things that we did get to see and that I feel really satisfied with this content. I think that there were so many ways in which it excelled, even if there are areas in which there are maybe some strange gaps, or maybe it was just too big and there was no way they would have ever been able to fill in all the nuances, or like, I am still really glad that we got it and that we got to re-envision the content even outside of just another 24-man, right? And that they did some things with this unique storytelling and these different bosses. And oh gosh, one that I didn't even mention was the lore with all of the different bosses in I always call it Deli Meat Reginald Delibra.
Yeah.
With the like them being the morphed versions and the like lore that and the myth that kind of goes behind it. Oh, it's so neat. I was like, that's very cool. So there's a lot to dig into in this content, and I would absolutely recommend that people do, and that you look into it and connect with it. And like we were saying earlier, go tell Matsuno that you enjoyed it if you did, or something about it that you enjoyed on Twitter, because I think the man could use it. But overall, there's a lot of really neat things here, and I hope we keep seeing the influence of this game in some way, because there's a lot to take away from Matsuno's work and from this whole setting that I think just makes the game stronger and more diverse as a whole.
All right. If that's it, then we'll start the roll.
I feel compelled, before we get out of here,
Yeah.
to agree with Jay in chat. We can have our Lilia appreciation moment, where I thought it was very funny to just have this random bun show up with these sunglasses. And when I first saw her, I was like, what? Who is this? What are you doing? And throughout the story, we found out that she had this like really deep backstory and was a really good kind of, I think, a foil for Messia in a way, of different ways you can be conflicted about imperial rule and follow your own sense of justice. Did you read her field note by chance?
Don't think so.
I don't know if I did, actually. Let's see.
Lilia was a Dalmascan orphan who was taken into Imperial care. She went through Imperial schooling. They kind of stood by her in that way as an orphan. She was going to be sent to the capital. And then just before she goes off to the military academy, the resistance blows all that out of the water and turns Rabanastre into a battlefield. So while she's in Doma, she befriends Jesse. She starts working at the ironworks, but like even working at the ironworks, she's thinking back to Gebranth's lesson that it falls to each person to use their talents in a way that forges the best life for themselves. So she's like following Gebranth's advice, fighting Gebranth. So like, I feel like we got so much more than just like a cool, non-problematic, dark-skinned character for once from Square Enix, who just like kind of added a lot of cool stuff to the story. So yes, Lilia appreciation moment.
Appreciated.
Didn't even know it. I did not look at that field note at all, because for me, I was like, okay, she's here and she's doing the thing. But that's a lesson right there. You know, if there's a field note, you should read it. You know, I was just saying that. But if there is one, you should read it. You never know.
That's interesting too, because it kind of mirrors the idea of them putting together a new government and still using ideas from the Fourth Legion.
Mm-hmm.
She's still using Gabranth's advice. The thing I really liked about this character, which is silly, is those types of sunglasses like make me think of the white plastic frames you see like 5-year-olds wear. You know? So
exactly.
Whenever I saw this character, I just had the impression that they were childish, even though they weren't really.
But it's neat though, because that does, I think, give that different facet to her character. And even like the idea of wearing something that almost kind of like deflects, I think, others seeing deeper, where, you're kind of hiding behind these shades. And I thought she was goofy as well at first, but it grew on me. I was like, she's just doing what she's doing. She's rocking it out. She's dyed her hair. She's got like these sunglasses on. She is just unashamedly being herself in a lot of ways, which I thought was really neat. And then to like learn the other things about her, and I'm sure you could draw a million different sort of character guesses out of why she might be like that or express herself in that way based off of that like more conflicted background is really interesting.
All right, here we go. You can't see me pointing, but I was pointing, can email us at aetheryteradio@gamerscape.com or tweet at us at aetheryteradio, and find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Discord at Gamerscape. Our Discord is discord.gg/Gamerscape. We also have an Aetheryte channel there, Aetheryte radio channel there, where you can talk to us about stuff you saw during the show that you liked, just stuff you saw during the show that we didn't talk about, you still want to talk about. Pretty much just come talk to us. We like it. And that'll do it for us today, I believe. Unless anybody has anything to plug or...
No. I think I feel very satisfied with where we've left this.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for coming to hang out. Oh, a fourth one, are you sure? We can do it.
Yeah, fourth.
I feel deeply dissatisfied.
Okay.
We should do another one next week.
All right. We'll see you guys next week for episode 200 of Aetheryte Radio. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.